Life was easy and predictable in the little coastal town where I grew up. My father had a prosperous insurance company that established our family's reputation for reliability, giving my family strong ties to the neighborhood. The steady rhythms of small-town life molded my early years, and I was drawn to the patterns and logic of money and markets, which made studying finances a comfort. I was resolved to follow in my father's footsteps by the time I graduated with my degree in finance. I intended to help individuals build their money gradually, but in a way that was all my own. Caution above danger. It was difficult for me to open my own practice in a town where everyone knew me as Joe Washburn's son, JT. However, I put in a lot of work, enhancing the strong reputation that my father had built. I was able to carve out a niche for myself over time and gain the respect of clients who valued my cautious approach to money management. But as the months passed, it was evident that the town was too tiny for me to achieve my goals. I started dividing my time between our hamlet and a larger nearby metropolis, since I felt I wanted to improve and ensure my future. This weekend was our turn to host the get-together. Our close-knit group of 6 couples met once a month to every 6 weeks, generally in one of our homes. Along with our neighbor Jackie and her husband Trent, the typical group comprised Sally, his friend, and her husband Carl. This was the core group, though occasionally others would join. Each of us was in our late 20s, none of us having children. Sally and Carl had made the decision not to have kids, and Trent, who had 2 from a prior marriage, shared them with his former partner. Even if he yearned for custody, there was usually food, drink, and a theme of some kind. On occasion, we might watch a sporting event on TV or play a game of Trivial Pursuit cards. We swam in Trent's pool when we first met at his house. The girls, especially Sally and my Anna, loved planning these get-togethers when the weather permitted. We would make some phone calls to ensure that we could have a sufficient number of attendees on a given date. They also enjoyed gossiping and chit-chatting over the phone. She is a curvaceous, busty woman with light brown hair that is wavy. She flirts a little bit, which gets on my nerves sometimes. She enjoys the attention, but in our relationship, as far as I know, she has never crossed any boundaries. My family still resides in the seaside town in Oregon where I grew up. I completed my studies at the State University of Finance and obtained my CFP certification. Despite my tendency toward introversion, I had a strong interest in statistics, money markets, and the background of our economic system. I gained credibility in the local financial community because my dad, who sold insurance in our town, was a trustworthy and reliable individual. I was actually given my father's name. I was JT and he was Joseph Washburn. I began leasing an office in his building and made a concerted effort to schedule meetings with people to lay out my plan for their financial support. Your money should increase gradually but sensibly, in my opinion. I would tell them that I worked for a large national corporation and that they provided me with a lot of financial information. I also enjoyed spending hours conducting my own research. I had a mediocrely successful first year. My clients' investments outperformed the market, and they enjoyed nice, steady returns. It was fun to work with my dad in the same office, and many of his enduring clientele also became mine. I made it a point to meet with my clients on a frequent basis in order to build personal relationships and provide attentive customer care. They valued the conversation. One thing became obvious as my second year got underway. There wasn't enough business in our community for me to make a decent living. As an economics student, I understood that I couldn't support myself just on the business in this town, and I had my own financial objectives. We chose to have dinner outside because the weather was great for our celebration. We had an outside kitchen area and a spacious deck with a barbecue. "Which theme do you want to use for this evening?" I inquired with Anna. She said, "Let's play a game. We're going to play a hilarious game that will make everyone laugh." "JT, isn't that a nice sound?" she exclaimed. At these events, there was a small contest to determine who could have the most fun. For the most part, I liked the cuisine, the beverages, and the company. I will admit that I enjoy wine, and there have been occasions when I drank a little too much of it. "Which game?" I inquired. "JT, don't worry, I'll work it out. Just prepare the barbecue." I was okay with that. My thoughts strayed to the group while I was setting everything up. "I'm coming over this evening. Carl and Sally come first. Since high school, Sally and Anna have been friends. Sally's weight gain is moderate despite her slight excess. Carl works at a large shop in our city as a diesel mechanic. He is laid back and doesn't seem to mind if Sally brags or flirts. He's a large man, perhaps 6'3". Even though I don't really like him, I doubt I would have chosen to be friends with him if it weren't for Anna and Sally's relationship. We live next door to Jackie and Trent, though I don't remember how we got to know them so well. Jackie has a wonderful body despite having a plain face. It's more sleek and slender than Anna's soft curves. She is intelligent. She's also the person with whom I connect the most out of the entire group. Trent plays golf. He is roughly 5'9" and slender. Trent first turned me off because of his haughtiness, but I've grown to like him. He's humorous, knowledgeable, and entertaining at these events, but I'm not sure I trust him. I heard the doorbell ring at that very moment. The visitors had begun to show up. I had recently made the decision to keep my seaside town office open while relocating my financial planning practice to the metropolis. There was only a 2.5-hour trip between the two locations. My intention was to remain with my parents for 1 week per month while visiting clients and potential clients in the town. It was going nicely thus far. Julian Lee, a friend from college who worked at a big bank, and I shared an apartment. I was shocked Julian went down that career path because he was a highly creative person. Our 2-bedroom apartment was located close to downtown in the hip Maples neighborhood. There were lots of eateries, pubs, and shops close by, and I could stroll to my workplace. It was undoubtedly a trendy, young, and hip neighborhood. We met at one of these bars, Anna and I. About 2 blocks from our apartment, Anna worked at the well-liked restaurant and bar Lucas. I started talking to Anna when I was there, maybe for the 3rd time with Julian. She appeared to me to be a gorgeous, voluptuous Playboy bunny. We had a conversation while Anna tended to the bar. She bombarded me with inquiries about my life, aspirations for my work, etc. To be honest, I was a little taken aback by her intense interest in me. I was simply a plain-looking financial planner, and she was lovely. Gail Benson was a consistent girlfriend of mine in high school. Gail was a pleasure to be around, intelligent, and pretty. Through college, we attempted to make it work, but it proved to be too challenging. I had a few dates over my 4 years in college, but I never had a committed relationship. I so almost asked Anna out that evening as we were leaving the bar. She even seemed to want me to, but I was hesitant, fearing that if she said no, we would have to look for another pub to visit. "Man, she is attractive," stated Julian. "She has feelings for you. Asking her out is a must." "You believe so," I answered. "You also ought to act quickly. You're going to get knocked out by someone else, if you fail to do so." I went to Lucas by myself the following evening and asked Anna out on a Sunday night. We then began dating. I felt a little threatened. She gave me all the proper indications that she was on to me, even though I'd never been with a girl this lovely. She didn't take long to give me what I thought was the ultimate sign herself. Actually, it is. I had never been with someone like Anna before. I'd had a few sexual partners up until then, including Gail, my high school girlfriend. Although I was still an undergraduate, I had explored my sexuality a little. In contrast, Anna held a PhD. We completed every task. She taught me things, did things to me, and did things together with total abandon. She was soft and curvaceous and quite feminine, yet she wasn't overweight. Every now and then I would marvel how she picked up all these skills. What level of experience did she have? I was aware of the response. Very experienced, but I didn't bring up her sexual past since I thought it would be too upsetting. My sexual enjoyment much surpassed any uneasiness I may have felt about it. All of them were seated on our rear deck. After dinner, we had each had roughly 2 beers in the evening. I was probably drinking my 3rd glass of red wine. Carl and I had a lengthy talk about his desire to take over as manager of the diesel shop where he works. He said that the owner was deeply religious and asked whether I believed that going to church with him would be a good way to win his favor. I warned him that it could come across as hypocritical if he wasn't passionate about the religion. He stated he would need to give it some thought. Sally stated as we sat and chatted. "What are the plans for tonight, Anna?" Anna said, "Okay, everyone, keep an open mind, and don't forget that this is all just for fun. Let's play a game of truth or dare." Carl, Sally, and Trent applauded, and I thought, oh no, unambiguously in agreement. When I glanced at Anna, she gave me a short smile before glancing at Sally. Trent and Carl were both smiling. Apart from me, Jackie was the only one not very excited. She smiled half the time. With a tinge of sexual innuendo, it began rather subdued. Nothing really dangerous. Which movie celebrity did you lust after, when you lost your purity, etc.? How old were you? Trent was the next to make the inquiry. He selected Anna, and she selected Dare. I'll give you a challenge, Sally. Take off your top or your shorts. Trent posed a difficulty. I said, wait a minute, it's all right, I'm wearing underwear. It resembles a bikini. According to Anna, she enjoys attention and has occasionally acted in a way that almost went too far. She shared her confident sexuality with me, which I adore. I most definitely didn't want anyone else to get that close to Anna. She swiftly removed her shirt and stood there showing off her delicate white bra. Trent and Carl whistled as she stood tall and proud. Sally laughed. You succeed, girl. Anna was savoring the attention. I was a little irritated, but I didn't say anything. Nothing really drastic happened in the game until Sally was brave enough to flash. Her husband Carl supported her, in contrast to me. They were undoubtedly large when she flashed them. Big, not to my liking. All the people except Jackie and me were laughing. I said, one more round and we're done with this game. A few protestations and chuckles ensued, but I was concerned we would go too far. When Anna's turn came, she questioned Trent. All right, my love. Trent asked Johnny the flasher to tens. Without hesitation, Jackie answered, Don't you dare! Trent got to his feet, undid his shirt collar and pants, and took down his boxers and shorts. Carl was laughing, and I was horrified, but both Anna and Sally were just looking. Trent even performed a small, dancer-like gyration. I turned to look at Anna. All she could do was look at him. Jackie said, I'm going to leave now. She seems a little irate. She also gave Trent the option of walking home or getting in the car while still wearing his clothes. The party came to a formal conclusion shortly after when everyone left. Anna was really quiet while we cleaned up. After we were done cleaning, I said, Don't you think that was a bit too far? Oh, it was merely a pastime. She joked back. Don't be such a stick in the mud. I shot back, Anna, people were here almost naked, and you were one of them. She stated she was naked. I'll show you my naked self. And then she started to undress. I became completely and swiftly sidetracked. Even still, I found the way the party had gone to be bothersome, and I was resolved to have a meaningful conversation about the incident tomorrow. Admittedly, I'm not the type of person that gets a kick out of seeing his wife get aroused around other men or expose herself. I dozed off, feeling somewhat disturbed but also sexually fulfilled. I got up early on Sunday morning and went for a run in the quiet of my workout. I had prepared the talk I was going to have with Anna. I wanted to be clear that even while I love a good party and having a good time just as much as the next person, my wife and our bodies are ours. On our wedding day, we made that vow, and I wasn't going to back down from it. I could hear Anna on the phone when I got home. The giggling stopped and the loudness lowered, so she must have heard me. Just before she heard me, I believed I heard the word package. That person was who? I inquired. Just Sally, huh? She laughed. She said our celebration was the finest yet, and Carl agreed that they had a terrific time. About that, I believe it would be beneficial for us to discuss some of the events of last night, particularly some of your actions. Anna was generally a kind person, and it took some work to enrage her. I was successful in my criticism of her actions. She snapped, calling it harmless and enjoyable. She claimed that nothing happened and that no one else is offended. My attempts to remain composed and articulate my emotions were met with her disinterest. She vented, then gave me the quiet treatment while I got to work in the yard. I attempted to analyze my emotions. It wasn't that I thought I was being unreasonable. I wanted to let her to be who she is. I married a woman like that. Her free attitude was admirable, but everything intimate should be between the two of us, including who sees her body. Admittedly, I felt a little uneasy. In contrast to Anna, who is a stunningly attractive woman, I'm simply a simple financial planner. I know I'm not ugly and I maintain my physical fitness, but I also know she gets approached by a lot of different types of individuals all the time, although there was never a good reason to mistrust her faithfulness. There were a few incidents before to our marriage that made me worry. By now, we had been dating for approximately 3 months, and for the most of that period, we had been having sex. I had some great talks with Anna and felt like I knew her personally. When she was young, her mother and an older sister were left behind by her father. Anna was a sucker for attention from men, and once her figure began to grow, she received enough of it. Her sexual past wasn't something I wanted to become too involved with, but I figured that by the time she was 16, she had lost her purity. She appeared to be playing around with both casual pals and boyfriends. She used the word. She never had to search far for the next one, predictably enough. She understood that her appearance could bring her attention, which she liked. The next Saturday night, we received an invitation to a party that a casual acquaintance was throwing. Although we hadn't formally declared our exclusivity at this time, in my opinion, we were. She had declared her love for me, and I believed that love and exclusivity were inseparable. The gathering was a little dressier than normal because it was December. I thought Anna's outfit was so cute that my eyes almost burst. Her chest was hardly exposed by the red outfit. "Do you think my dress looks good?" Anna was teased by her. "You look amazing, but that is quite skimpy," I answered. "You know, it's a little too much and I'll probably have some clients there." Even though Anna doesn't get upset very frequently, when she does, it's usually always because of her appearance. She said she got angry. I was afraid she would make me look bad because I felt she was trashy and so forth. I apologized, though it took some time. Even so, things were a touch icy. She donned the dress as we went to the celebration. The mansion was spacious, set in the hills, exquisitely furnished, and provided an abundance of food and beverages. There were folks I knew from college, people from my sports club, and some of my co-workers from work. Mikhail Nestor, a guy I recognized from college, was one of those haughty, attractive sorts that exuded confidence and had slicked back black hair and a smarmy smirk. He was driving around sipping champagne and flashing that arrogant smile. Then he noticed Anna. The majority of the attention that Anna was receiving, primarily from men, was directed at her cleavage. She stuck with me, and all of a sudden I was well-liked by co-workers and casual friends. I once went to grab us some drinks. McAllister was talking to Anna when I got back. Anna was adoring the way he treated me, as though I was an old friend, every single focus. And now this attractive guy was listening intently to everything she said, as though it were the most interesting thing he had ever heard. We drifted apart eventually, as parties go, but I was able to steer her away from him. I was discussing some helpful business ideas with some co-workers at work. I looked at Anna and realized it had been more than an hour. I glanced through the kitchen, family room off the kitchen, and living room. Nothing. I was determined to find her, even though I didn't want to come across as agitated, nor could I locate McAllister. I stepped outside into the winter air and saw some people smoking. No Anna. From across the street, I heard her laughing as I made my way back inside. She was strolling up the street with McAllister when I walked down the sidewalk. She took a moment to notice me, but from what I could see, they were having fun together. "I see. Hello, my love. Just now, Jim showed me his brand new BMW. McAllister stated she's a handful, that is, the vehicle." He chuckled. I gave Anna a quick glance. She appeared a little rumpled, but nothing really seemed amiss. Even though I was furious inside, I forced a smile. Anna wrapped her arm around me as they approached. "I'm about to leave," I stated. "I was just checking if you needed a ride home." She gave me a questioning look and said, "Of course I want a ride home." Why wouldn't I? That's when McAllister gave me a backslap. He held out his hand and said, "Nice to see you again." My anger towards Anna and this guy's haughtiness fuels my strong grip, even though I'm not a bodybuilder. I gripped his hand hard. By the time he realized what was happening, I was crushing his hand. His knees buckled, and his mouth opened in a silent cry. "Honey, you're hurting Jim," Anna cried. "I apologize." "My bad," I said, and I started walking to the car without looking back to see if Anna was following. By the time I got to my car and buckled up, she had caught up with me. This was our first big fight. I really liked her. She was great looking, and the sex was off the charts, at least by any standard I'd known. I knew she craved attention and measured her worth by the attention she received from men. We hadn't formalized anything at this point, but to me, a steady sexual relationship where we saw each other more than a few times a week and talked about love was the adult version of going steady. But we had never explicitly discussed it. I dropped her off, and she gave me a puzzled look when I told her I was staying at my place tonight. "Oh, honey, come on up. Nothing happened with Jim." "We were just having fun," she said. "Well, I guess I've had about enough fun for one night." "See you later," I said, and drove off. She called and texted, but I ignored her. Life went on for me, and I focused on my work. My week on the coast was coming up, so I decided to leave on Saturday morning instead of my usual Sunday night. I called my mom, and she was thrilled to have me for the weekend. I had a good week back in my hometown with productive client meetings. My steady business on the coast and my growing city practice were making me successful. I was achieving my financial goals and getting noticed within my organization. A week ago, I would have said my personal life was on the right track. I couldn't say that now. She kept texting and calling, and my responses were minimal. She asked when I was getting back, and I told her Friday night. No sooner had I arrived home when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Anna standing there in a raincoat holding a wrapped present. "This is for you," she said, handing me the gift. I opened it to find an old-fashioned skeleton key inside. "You hold the key to my heart," she said. I stared at her, feeling a mix of emotions. Then she unbolted her raincoat, revealing a figure that could have been straight out of a Playboy centerfold. Any teenage fantasy come to life. Whatever resolve I had melted away in a wave of lust. Afterward, I asked her about what had happened at the party with McAllister. "I know I shouldn't have gone outside with Jim, but he was so nice," she said. "What took place?" I inquired. "Nothing. He tried to get a little handsy, but I've been handling guys like that since I was 14 years old. We talked, and I told her that I can get jealous. I went on to say that if she wasn't ready for a boyfriend, I'd be sad, but I'd understand. I explained that I'm not the type to play around. I'm either in a casual relationship or fully committed. What we had, I emphasized, was not a casual relationship. She rolled on top of me and told me she was committed too. She also said she loved me and wanted to be with me forever. And then she proceeded to make love to me. Anna doesn't hold grudges, so after the truth or dare party, things returned to normal. She remained the same loving, hot woman I'd fallen for. In fact, she seemed more attentive, and I noticed less interaction with Sally when I was around one Saturday while I was working in the yard. Trent passed by, which wasn't unusual since he lived nearby. We struck up a conversation about lawns and gardening, eventually moving to the back deck with some drinks. Although Trent and I weren't particularly close, he was a bit cocky. We ended up talking for a while. He opened up about his custody battle, revealing a vulnerable side that made him more likable. I started to reconsider my opinion of him. Then, out of the blue, Trent asked, "Where's Anna?" I told him she was shopping, and we resumed our conversation. 15 minutes later, Anna appeared in a tiny bikini and ducked behind the privacy screen, greeting Trent as she passed. Trent, of course, couldn't resist trying to catch a glimpse. I quickly wrapped up our chat and walked him to the gate. As he left, he jokingly asked if Anna needed help with suntan lotion. The incident reminded me of a past situation with McAllister. After that, our relationship improved significantly. I'd forgiven Anna's earlier behavior, reasoning that we hadn't been fully committed at the time. Now we were. Anna was affectionate, fun, and sexually adventurous. She was also beautiful, and I loved being seen with her in public. As time went on, Anna started hinting about our future together, which I had been thinking about too. I felt torn. On one hand, I wondered if she was the right long-term match for me. On the other, I couldn't deny she was every man's fantasy. Eventually, I decided that no one else could compare to Anna, and I proposed to her, surprising her with a Caribbean vacation. She was thrilled, calling her mom and Sally to share the news. When I told my parents they were happy for me, though, my dad sounded a bit hesitant. The resort was incredible, with pools, bars, restaurants, and a private beach. On our first day, Anna wore a revealing bikini, drawing plenty of attention. We enjoyed drinks and a walk on the beach, then headed back for a casual meal. Afterward, slightly tipsy, we watched the sunset from our balcony, where things quickly turned close. It was amazing. The resort staff were very attentive, always available to provide towels, directions, or anything else we needed. The Beach Boys, young men in their early 20s, catered to the guests on the lounge chairs, mostly working for tips. Their main customers were women in their 40s who enjoyed the attention. They would bring drinks, towels, move chairs, or even apply sunscreen if asked. Naturally, Anna, in her skimpy bikinis, caught their eye crews. One of the Beach Boys with golden skin, a lean build, and a bright smile was often nearby. One day I suggested a jet ski ride, but Anna wanted to work on her tan, so I arranged an hour session on my own. After having fun on the ocean, I returned to find Cruz massaging Anna's bare back. It even seemed like he might have been touching more than just her back. "Why is this happening?" I inquired. Cruz quickly stood up. I didn't want Miss Anna to get sunburned, so I was applying sunscreen. He stumbled over his words. "I'll handle it, thanks," I said, and he hurried away. "Anna, what was that about?" I asked quietly but firmly, not wanting to cause a scene. "By what do you mean?" she answered. "Your top is undone and this guy had free access to your body. Was he feeling you up?" "Oh, relax," she said. "He might have touched the sides a bit, but my body is just for you." I set aside the event with Cruz and focused on being with Anna. Soon after, I suggested a siesta, which she knew meant more. I had to carry a towel to disguise my arousal as we walked back to our room. Eventually, the holiday ended and we discussed wedding arrangements on the trip home as Anna dozed. I pondered on the fantastic trip. However, I couldn't totally forget Cruz and his hands on her. After the weekend, Trent stopped by and life returned to usual. Work was busy and rewarding, and I was developing a decent nest egg. Anna still worked at Lucas, typically lunch hours, allowing us to spend most evenings together. She liked having her own money even if she didn't have to work. After the Truth or Dare party, Anna and Sally organized the next couple's get-together as summer got underway. These gatherings seemed to be fading away from me, but they announced that the next one would take place in mid-July at Trent and Jackie's, a gathering at the pool. As soon as I heard this, I informed Anna, not one of the Caribbean's bikinis. She said, "I'll wear the red one." I insisted, "No way. It's one thing for strangers to perceive you that way, but not for our friends." She didn't dispute, so I assumed the matter was resolved. But my mother called me on the Tuesday before the celebration. After suffering a heart attack, my dad had bypass surgery. Anna held my hand as we hurried to the hospital and I made a phone call. I was concerned about my dad and how my mother would manage without his constant presence. When we got there, we learned that Dad was anticipated to recover fully from the successful procedure. That evening, I stayed with him while my mother and Anna went home to recover. Dad was happy enough to solve a crossword puzzle the following day. It was an uneventful day spent in the hospital. I advised Anna go back home as I could sense she was bored. After some hesitation, Anna decided to go that afternoon. I spent Thursday assisting my folks with their relocation. My father and I agreed that watching baseball was tedious but essential. I gave Anna a call on Friday. When she asked when I would be home, I informed her that I wouldn't be home until Sunday at the latest. I had forgotten about the party until she reminded me about it. I said I was sorry and asked if she was still going to go. She mentioned Jackie and Sally, but she wasn't sure. Her sisters were putting pressure on her. When Saturday arrived, Dad appeared worn out. I offered to help Mom around the house while I slept. Before my mother called me for supper, I had been setting up storage racks in the basement for many hours. Joining her at the table was me. "Dad is already asleep," she muttered. "All right. He must get some rest." I gave a nod. I went back to sorting the storage shelves after supper. I was losing time when I noticed that almost 10 o'clock had passed. I must give Anna a call. I whispered as I dialed her number. "Hello. How are you?" When she answered, I inquired. The background was filled with sounds. "Hello, honey. I'm at Jackie's in Trenton." With a preoccupied tone, she answered, "We're having a great time." "Yes, it is correct. This evening is the celebration," I recalled. "How is my father doing?" A pause occurred. Then I heard giggles and a high-pitched scream. "What is happening?" Worried, I asked. "What, my dear?" She chuckled, obviously having fun. "How much alcohol have you consumed?" I questioned, apprehensive. Her voice trailed off as she replied, "The connection isn't great. Could I give you a call again? I'll give you a call back." Frustrated, I said, but the line remained open before I could hang up. All of a sudden, I could clearly hear Trent remark, "Get that top off, too." Laughter ensued. Though it was hazy, I thought I heard Anna's voice. The call was then dropped. They were clearly not merely having fun. What on earth is happening? I pondered out loud. I decided to phone my old neighbor, Henry Anderson, since I was too exhausted to go home and I needed answers. "Henry, will you please do me a favor? Capture a few images of the events taking place at Trent and Jackie's. I have to know what's happening." Henry answered, "On it." I provided him instructions on how to set up to take a picture of their backyard. With relief, I answered, "Thanks, man. Too tired to think, I completed my task, switched off my phone, and went to bed. I discovered many pictures from Henry waiting for me the following morning. They exceeded my expectations. Picture 1 shows Anna fully nude with Trent. Picture 2. Carl reaches out and grabs Anna. In the third picture, Sally and Anna are both naked. Carl and Trent dancing. Trent and Anna having sex in photo 4. As I browsed over them, I mumbled. It's undeniable evidence of Anna's adultery, I thought, feeling numb. I have to divorce Trent and Carl, safeguard my property, and exact revenge. Anna called at midday, sounding quite fond. You are missed. How is your father doing? What time will you be returning home? She said, I truly need you. I almost went up to her but refrained. I'll figure out a means to exact revenge. All I need, I determined, is a plan. Dad's condition has gotten worse. I was dishonest. I must remain for an extra week. Oh no, with concern, she said. Do you require my presence? No, preferably you shouldn't. I answered, Dad can't stand the enthusiasm. I left into the city that Monday night and gave my former roommate, Julian, a call to ask if I might stay with him for a few days. Yes, JT, he replied, startled but understanding. He told me his brother was in town on Thursday from New York when I got there. Julian clarified that he is considering switching careers. Interesting. I answered, then told him everything that had transpired and showed him the pictures. Julian was taken aback. Although Anna seemed flirtatious, I didn't believe she would cheat. He stated, I said, I want to get even with Anna and the whole group. But until I figure this out, I have to keep this from Anna. Julian gave a nod. I refused to speak. When I spotted Carl leaving for his truck the following day, I was waiting outside his building. I gave a wave. I said, Carl, let's grab a beer. Though astonished, he accepted. We visited a little deserted bar nearby. I placed my beer order and leaned in. What took place on Saturday evening, I inquired. Just another ordinary gathering. Carl gave a shrug. This is not unusual, I inquired, displaying a picture of Henry to him. Hello, dude. The females removed their garments. It had no significance. Carl remarked, attempting to minimize it. All right, no big deal. I leaned in closer after saying that. However, what do you suppose your supervisor would say about this? Carl stopped, being aware of his boss's strong religious beliefs and his intense desire for a raise. As he got up to go, I pushed him back into his chair. Take a seat and be quiet. I want to ask you some questions, and you have to tell me everything unless you want your boss to see these pictures. Carl appeared to be in a desperate mood. All right, he concurred. He informed me about Anna, and we sat for more than an hour. In high school, Anna and Sally belonged to the less fortunate group. He clarified that although the older kids made fun of them for their antiquated automobiles and attire, they recognized that their good looks provided them an advantage. They were well liked since Sally had a huge chest and Anna was attractive. Carl's tone remained a mixture of resentment and resignation. They both had lovers by the age of 15, so it's likely that's when they lost their innocence. I tightened my fists and said nothing, allowing him to continue. After a few brief relationships later in high school, Sally told me about a chat she had with Anna. All I want is a nice house, nice car, and nice clothes, Anna remarked. Since I enjoy having sex, I don't mind exchanging it for material goods. A man who can give me that is what I'll find. Richer people are preferable. As Carl talked, my gut twisted. So this is how she has always been? While trying not to panic, I asked, Yes. Carl gave a nod. She had a boyfriend when the two of you started dating. She dated you for about 3 months while continuing to see the other guy because, as she told Sally, she thought you had greater possibilities. I became quite angry. She was therefore present for us both at the same moment. My voice rising, I asked, Yes. As he sipped his beer, Carl spoke. I also know of at least 2 other males she's dated since you were married. My drink almost choked me, who I insisted upon. Carl gave a shrug. I may be missing some facts, but one included a man by the name of McCallum. You knew him? She asked. I instantly thought of McAllister, the man we married after meeting him at a party. Carl drank his beer casually while I sat there fuming, unaffected by the shocking revelation he had just made. Anna would therefore leave me if someone came along who was richer and had a better house and car. I knew the answer when I asked. Indeed, she would, Carl said without thinking. I sat silently, trying to take it all in. At last, I inquired about the events of Saturday. Was Jackie a part of this? Carl gave a headshake. No. Due to an altercation with her sister's boyfriend, Jackie left early. The others in the group began at that point. Thus, Jackie is unaware of what transpired? I inquired, a little relieved. Don't tell her, please, Carl persisted. I asked after nodding. Do you find it bothersome that Sally is dating other men? Carl laughed hysterically. Spouse. We're not tied to one another. We've never been married, but Sally calls me her husband. She matters to me. However, marriage? Not in her presence. For that reason, we are childless. It was time to part ways. I had a great deal on my mind. Not only was Anna promiscuous, she was only with me because she needed financial security and would go if a better offer came up. For the time being, only Carl was aware of what I knew. Even Carl, for all his apparent ignorance, knew more about women than I did. I told Julian what Carl had told me when I got back to his apartment. Angry feelings soon replaced my sadness, and I felt ashamed. To what extent had I been made fun of behind my back? After posing a few queries, Julian put on his headphones and began using his laptop. I grew more irate as I sat there sipping wine. Julian unplugged after some while and inquired, Has she ever met John Paul? No, I answered, perplexed. It was in college when I last saw him. Why? With a simple shake of his head, Julian turned back on. A few minutes later, he smiled mischievously as he looked up. Can you obtain $30,000 in a hurry? He inquired. Indeed. However, why? Intrigued but wary, I inquired. And if this succeeds, I need you to sign a 6-month lease on a BMW, he continued, typing quickly. Why? I inquired once more inquisitive. With a smile, Julian leaned back. I've got a scheme. A BMW lease will set you back $30,000, but the expense will be worthwhile. Julian filled me in and I listened. Tomorrow go home to Anna and behave normally. Return here after work on Thursday. John Paul is expected to be present. I told Anna I would be home tonight over the phone the next day. I tried to act normal, attributing any strange behavior to my concern for my father. She wasn't paying much attention, or I was a better actor than I realized. I went to Julian and John Paul's condo on Thursday night. Julian introduced himself and then explained the strategy. John Paul would pretend to be a wealthy investment banker from New York in order to entice Anna and win her over. Julian emphasized that John Paul needs to finish this by the end of 5 months, which is when his play is scheduled to begin. John Paul, a handsome man with a captivating grin, gave me a serious look. Do you mind if I share your bed with her? She is, after all, your wife. I felt aloof as I gazed at him. It doesn't concern me. You'll probably be having sex in a few days after 5 months. And with that, our planning began. I stressed the need for secrecy and offered them Anna's work schedule. The week went by without any problems. Anna seemed normal to me, though I kept an eye out for any changes. We had sex, yes, but it didn't feel special, both rewarding and draining. We got together again at Julian's place on Thursday night. I was hoping for some news soon. John Paul started, hoping Anna wouldn't fall for him, but also hoping she wouldn't. I've made 3 trips to Lucas. I made sure she saw me first. Second, we engaged in some casual discussion. Third, our names were switched. She claimed to work from 11 until 3. He went on. I'll be there at 2 tomorrow for coffee and a late lunch with her. To play the part, I had to purchase a $1,200 suit. The ensuing week went by without incident, but my thoughts about Anna and John Paul's relationship continued to consume me. I questioned why it felt like waiting for the next episode of a beloved TV show when I realized Anna was home late one afternoon. On Thursday night, I was very excited to hear the most recent news. John Paul grinned as he started his report. On Friday, we had coffee. Although Anna stated that she is married, she seemed to be having trouble coming across as available. We decided to go to lunch on Tuesday. He clarified that he gradually revealed his affluence, hinting at it subtly. Anna was starting to act colder toward me in the meantime, which was encouraging. I arrived home around 5 on the day of their lunch date, but Anna wasn't there. When I returned from a run, she hadn't shown up yet. She came in at last as I was preparing dinner. Hello, honey. What kind of day did you have? Curious about her answer, I asked. Yes, I worked late in the end, trying to seem casual, she replied. Though I knew she hadn't succeeded, I still went along. I allowed us to drift apart at that point. The sex was still fantastic, but it felt easier to feign because it was more physical than emotional. I simplified things for her. "Do you need assistance, Dad?" "I have to leave Friday afternoon," I said. "Do you think I should accompany you?" she inquired, but her offer seemed hesitant. "No, it's okay," I answered. "I'm only assisting and will be here until next week in order to meet with clients." John Paul told me on Thursday night that their lunch date had devolved into a kissing match. "We scheduled a time for Friday night after she said that you would be out of town." He smiled confidently as he said, "She is undoubtedly intrigued." I experienced conflicting emotions, betrayal, rage, and relief that the scheme was succeeding. Everything was happening just the way I had planned. It was like pulling strings. Still, a tiny part of me found it hard to accept that this was actually happening. The friendship between Anna and John Paul developed as it was supposed to as the weeks went by. I was positive they had slept together by the weekend. While she was with him, I stayed at my parents' house, which was conveniently out of the way. That should come as no surprise. Anna started to distance herself from me at home. It was necessary but bittersweet. I would sometimes catch melancholy glimpses of the woman I had loved. However, those were fleeting moments. 3 months or so later, John Paul began to show Anna his feelings and asked for a commitment. By then, she was positive he was an expensive Manhattan apartment-owning New York investment banker. One evening, John Paul stated, "It's obvious she's moved on when she talks about you. Although she hasn't yet had the chat with you, she stated that the relationship is ended." A few weeks later, "Sally and I are organizing a spa weekend in California," Anna inquired in jest. "Is that acceptable?" I was aware of her weekend invitation to Sun Valley from John Paul. "Have fun," I replied, trying to act as if I didn't know. She was really loving that night, almost like she was making up for something. I couldn't help but notice how ignorant of the true situation she was in. During the journey to Idaho, John Paul intended to pop the question with a $500 cubic zirconium ring that appeared remarkably authentic. Anna wouldn't have any suspicions. John Paul reported during our discussion on Thursday. She showed me a picture of Anna grinning with the ring after saying yes to the proposal. She promised to speak with you about her departure this week. The time I had been waiting for had finally arrived. In order to get her to agree to my requirements and save my property, I planned to appear distraught, challenge her on it, and draw out the proceedings for as long as possible. Anna was hesitant to approach me at first. "JT," she remarked in a trembling voice, "we need to talk." I raised my head and pretended not to know. "What's not right?" She inhaled deeply. "It seems like it's time for us to part ways. I would like to be with someone else that I have met." I sounded astonished and trembled when I spoke. "How come? We are wed. Anna, this is unbelievable." She looked away from me. "I apologize, JT, but this is it. I have to move on." I went from being shocked to furious. "I refuse to let you go," I yelled. "In order to resolve this, we need therapy." I knew she was ready to get this over with, so I was not surprised when she was taken aback by my response. She brought a document with her and placed it on the table between us a few days later. Her voice was barely heard as she said, "This is what I'm suggesting. I'll renounce my claim to your possessions, everything. Your car, our house. My only request is for an instant divorce. I pretend to be completely broken and put on the show of a lifetime. It's unbelievable that you're doing this." With a few drops of Vicine, I summoned her with a whisper and crimson eyes from artificial tears. I did, however, sign the documents with a trembling hand, making sure to keep up the charade all the way through if this is really what you desire. I could see the bounce in her step as she accepted the documents and walked away. She was walking into the last phase of the plan, but she mistakenly believed she was about to embark on a new life in New York with a wealthy man. Our divorce would be formalized on October 5th, and it was mid-September. Anna had given up any claim to my belongings and had assumed she would be getting married and relocating to New York by the end of October. To complete the strategy, we had a meeting with Julian that Thursday. For the following 2 weeks, John Paul would continue to live in the rented condo and keep up the facade. They were scheduled to depart for New York on Friday. Anna would come back to our place to get her own items and clothing. Naturally, John Paul would never show up even though he would promise to meet her there with a moving truck. Her hopes of starting over would vanish along with John Paul by the time she recognized what was going on. John Paul revealed to her that he went by Taylor. With a sly smile, Julian gave his explanation. It'll be costly and difficult for her to find him. She'll be very much bankrupt. With a hint of pity, John Paul nodded. Man, this is really cruel. To me, he said. Are you certain about this? Without hesitation, I met his gaze. Not quite as brutal as her treatment of me. I gave a chilly response. He sighed and said, I get it. However, I will miss that flesh. She was the best there is. I let out a sigh. Yes, I will also miss it. Although the truth was that I was more than eager to move on, I nevertheless admitted. In the ensuing weeks, I had courteous but aloof experiences with Anna. I never asked her to stay with me again, even though I had to pretend to be sorry a few times. I was worried that she might say yes. She was due to leave on Friday. As she was packing, I met her at the house. Though I knew it was done, a part of me thought about attempting to get in one more session before bed. She was obviously thinking that she was going to start a new chapter in her life because she was dressed up. Are you in need of assistance with packing? I offered, speaking in an impartial tone. She smiled and responded, No, I'm fine, ready to move on from this phase of her life. She called John Paul for the first time by 12:30 p.m. As the call failed, I saw her countenance go from bewilderment to frustration. She murmured, The number has been disconnected. Making another call. Her face pale, she turned to face me. Could I borrow your phone? She inquired. Yes, I said, giving it to her and watched as she made another attempt, but got the same outcome. She made a call to the opulent condominium that John Paul had been visiting. However, they informed her that the unit was once again up for rent because the payments were made until Saturday. Panic started to creep in. She shook her head and added, I'm going to drive back to the condo and see what's going on. Can I temporarily leave my belongings here? Naturally, I answered, maintaining a cool head. Give it some time. She hurried off, and for the remainder of the weekend, I heard nothing from her. I was completely aware of her situation. While she was dealing with that, she experienced confusion, panic, and finally the conclusion that she had been duped. I said that phase 2 of the strategy would begin. I mailed her 3 packets with pictures from the sex party she'd attended when I was with my dad. Carl, Trent, Sally, and Anna's faces and fully exposed bodies were all easily recognized in the pictures. Carl's deeply religious supervisor received packet 1 along with a message that said, I think a man's moral character is reflected in the quality of work they do. Do you not also bundle it? Was delivered with a message that read, Look at what your ex is up to Trent's ex-wife. I'm so glad the kids are with you, with a message that read, I guess you and I missed the best part yet. Packet 3 was sent to Jackie. I apologize for informing you of this, but you should be aware. When things have subsided, would you like a drink? I put my name and phone number on every note that I signed. I needed to take care of one more thing, McAllister. I thought about asking Julian to think of something for him. 2. Naturally, Anna eventually made an effort to get back in touch with us. The next Monday night, she appeared as though she had just arrived home from work. Hello, my love. I apologize for our small mistake, she replied, forcing a grin. I'm permanently at home. I gave her a chilly look. You ruined my life, Anna, I said with disdain in my voice. This isn't where you live. Remember how you were going to sneak off to New York with someone? She said, No, I've changed my mind. Her voice was beginning to sound desperate. I want you. I had had enough acting. Ignore it, I stated outright. Leave immediately and don't come back. She went back to her old tricks, taking off her top and unhooking her bra in a hurry, attempting to entice me as she had countless times in the past. But I had had enough, I said, slamming the door in her face. For me, say hello to John Paul. I looked out the window to see her standing there, trying to make sense of the fact that I had brought up John Paul in every conversation, a blank look on her face. He had never revealed his true name. She was beginning to realize how deeply she'd been duped. Taking one last glance, I saw Henry Anderson lean over the fence to get a good look at Anna, who was standing there bare-chested. I laughed quietly. Anna was living with Sally as of the last I heard. She'll definitely be trying out for the next dumbass with the appropriate body part. Regarding Carl, I've heard that he was fired in addition to not receiving the promotion. Shortly after leaving Sally behind, he departed the town. Trent was a different matter entirely. He lost even more visitation rights and was flatly denied custody when he appeared in court for the hearing. It seems that the pictures were a big factor in that choice. Jackie called me in a panic one Saturday night. She trembled in voice as she continued, "Trent's coming to your place. He has a weapon and is inebriated. He is aware of the photos you gave. I stole into the backyard and grabbed some pillows and blankets. I set up a fictitious corpse behind the covers on the chaise lounge and enticed him with a tiny lit. On the other side of the privacy screen, I concealed among the dense shrubs, with a baseball bat in hand. I knew he was coming even if Jackie hadn't called. Trent banged on the front door, and when I didn't respond, he entered the rear through the gate. He saw the lounge chair arrangement right away and scurried over to shoot twice into the blankets. His arm was broken by the bat's first swing, and he dropped the weapon while wailing in agony. I swung around again, this time going for his lap, determined to take off that specific menace as well. I then dialed the police while brandishing the gun and hearing gunfire. Not much research was necessary. Trent was being accused of attempted liquidation, and I was defending myself. To thank Jackie for the warning, I gave her a call. "Thank you very much." With a still unsteady voice, she spoke. "Now, about the beverage you brought up. This is the following tale. I believed I had everything. The ideal life, the ideal wife. However, I later noticed it. The real deal. I wasn't supposed to see her curled up in his arms, giggling like if I didn't exist. My heart gave out. Everything. We were gone in an instant." She gave me a look, not a trace of guilt or dread. Only icy, callous indifference. It dawned on me then that this was not the first time. It was me who made the mistake, being deceived by someone. My life's passion was having an affair with the adversary, and I was nothing at all. Everyone was taken aback by Steve's passing. He was far too young to be taken away. At only 35, he was only a few years older than I was. Tragically, he died in a foreign nation in the midst of a perilous circumstance. He had been attempting to complete a transaction with some men who proved to be quite different from the honest businessmen. That's what they said they were. Unfortunately, their competitors chose to attack because they were a part of a wider network of illicit activity. Steve didn't survive the sudden attack that targeted him and the others he was meeting with. It was an abrupt and terrible loss. I couldn't help but wonder if he was thinking of his wife Jen and their future together in his last moments. Even though Steve had everything he needed to lead a happy life, he was constantly motivated to pursue something greater, never content with the success he had attained thus far. Usually, when we were out on his boat fishing, he would share his big plans with me. He didn't care that I wasn't much use in understanding the business world in which he prospered. He took pleasure in discussing his concepts. I quipped that I was only able to understand half of what he was saying. He nonetheless continued to discuss his most recent endeavors despite this. It was evident to me that he valued having a confidant. Steve took risks because he was driven by a desire for success. I had advised him to exercise caution, particularly when interacting with strangers. I had first-hand knowledge that not everyone could be trusted. Steve, though, had faith in his skills. I turned down his invitation to accompany him on this final business trip. Nothing felt quite right. Steve and I went back to his house one evening after a tiring day on the water. He'd had a bit too much to drink, and Jen was there to watch as I helped him into the living room. She grinned, but I could tell she was nervous. "This is where you should let him sleep tonight." Quietly, she said, "Perhaps he will reconsider before going overboard the next time." I had become close to Jen over the years. She would often comment on how Steve was different in my presence, more at ease, less diligent in their work. She liked that I didn't give a damn about his money or rank, just about our friendship-filled time together. It provided him with a respite from the demands of his profession. Steve had previously admitted to me that his hectic schedule had caused him to neglect their relationship. Jen deserved more attention, and he felt bad not giving it to her. Jen was someone people couldn't help but admire. She had a magnetic presence, and her warmth was evident in everything she did. She had once been a model, but had since focused on their life together, yet she still carried herself with grace and confidence. As we sat there, I remembered how Jen had helped me get over my initial shyness when we first met. She had a way of making everyone around her feel comfortable. I knew Steve was lucky to have her, and it was clear that she brought out the best in him as we spoke. I saw her smile for the first time that evening, despite the sadness of the moment. She had hope. She loved Steve, and she knew that even though he got caught up in his ambitions, he cherished their life together. If you're talking about regular boots, I have them in snakeskin, ostrich skin, and plain leather. After I collected myself and she stopped laughing, I asked her out. She looked surprised and asked me why. Because, Jen, you need a chance to unwind and enjoy yourself. I want to show you something exciting. Her smile faded and I hurried to clarify. I'm going out to a little club tonight that I think you'd enjoy. You're a really wonderful person, and I'm sure many guys would jump at the opportunity to spend time with you. I'm part of a rare group that likes to respect boundaries. All I'm suggesting is a fun night out where you can relax and maybe dance a bit. I promise to look after you. Plus, I can take pictures so you can share the fun later. You seemed a bit down, so I thought I'd extend this offer. Will there be drinks and maybe some lively characters? Definitely on the first part. No, to the rest. We like to keep it friendly there. If someone acts up, the staff ensures things stay calm and safe. I just thought you'd like to join. I got up from the kitchen table, rinsing my coffee cup before setting it on the counter. Jen often joked that my neatness would make me a great partner someday. We'll take the truck. Why not the sports car? If we took that, every local guy would be distracted. Now let's go for jeans and a nice shirt. And Jen, can you turn the thermostat down a little? The way you look, I might attract unwanted attention. She playfully stuck out her tongue and told me to wait 10 minutes. I mentioned needing to go home for a shower to freshen up and change clothes. She took my hand and led me to a stylish bedroom, and I felt a bit uneasy. Stay here, she instructed, walking into a spacious closet filled with clothes. I could hear her rummaging through drawers. Moments later, she returned with jeans, a nice shirt, and fashionable boots. She led me to a nearby guest room with a large bathroom. Here you go. These are practically new. I didn't bring you any undergarments, so you'll have to figure that out. Now freshen up and meet me downstairs in 20 minutes. Steve and I were the same size, even shoe sizes, the only difference being a slight height difference. People often mistook us for brothers. After a quick shower and shave, I dressed and was surprised at how good I looked. They say clothes can boost confidence. When Jen appeared, she looked stunning. The jeans hugged her figure perfectly, and her shirt matched her lips. Her curls were styled in a way that looked effortless yet charming. She held a striking hat and stylish boots. How do I look? She twirled, showing off her outfit. Looks like you're ready for excitement, I said with a grin. She smiled back. That's exactly the idea. Come on, let's go. Before heading out, we checked on Steve, who was fast asleep. Jen left him a note and some water. We took his truck, which was large and shiny. I figured it was better suited for the night ahead. After about 40 minutes, we arrived at the barn, a venue designed to resemble a barn. As we stepped out of the truck, many looked our way, especially at Jen. She noticed the attention and walked confidently inside while holding my arm tightly, maybe a sign of her own nerves. Once we entered, all chatter seemed to cease as everyone turned to look at us. The band hadn't started yet, and I grinned, waving to the bartender to bring me a picture. Within moments, she arrived. Although she accidentally spilled a drink in her excitement, I gently stopped her apologies and reassured her. Jen, with her kindness, made her feel better as I met up with my friends. Jen quickly charmed them and soon had them laughing. I leaned back, enjoying watching her work, her magic. When the band started, I grabbed her hand and pulled her to the dance floor. It took her just a moment to find her footing again, and I discovered she had a background in dance. After a few lively dances, I brought her back to the table, smiling at her disappointment. I need a break now, I said. I looked at Greg and added, let's keep the fun going. Jen eagerly pulled him from his seat, eager to keep dancing. 30 minutes later, she brought him back, plainly out of breath but happy. She sat down for a time, relaxing with a drink. A few minutes later, the band started playing a slow song that everyone appreciated. They jokingly called it the Snuggle Special. She pulled me to the dance floor and I followed. Dancing with her felt extraordinarily intimate, and it was hard not to notice the way she moved. At one point I tried to step back, but she simply grinned and stepped closer. I was flustered when the song ended and had to excuse myself to calm off. By the time I returned, she was dancing with Greg, moving with grace and beauty. Her background in ballet was clear, and watching her felt like seeing poetry in motion. Unfortunately, Barb tried to disrupt the moment. "Jamie, I thought you said you'd never be interested in someone who's married, but who could resist that?" She gazed toward Jen with a sense of jealousy. Barb had once been wonderfully handsome, but over the years life had taken its toll. Barb had tried to get me once, but I had turned her down. I declined her request with grace, explaining that I didn't interact with married ladies. Since then, she had gone through several divorces and appeared to be living off the settlements. She was obviously still searching for someone fresh. "It's not like that, Barb. As one of my closest friends, Jen, I would never betray her trust. All we want to do is enjoy the evening here. Have you observed that she hasn't acted inappropriately? All she's doing is dancing and enjoying herself." Barb was not persuaded. "I've seen how you look at her when she's not looking, and how she looks at you." "Perhaps so, Barb, but it wouldn't matter if I felt anything at all. I respect that Jen and I are just friends. You ought to keep in mind what loyalty and trust look like." To my astonishment, Barb looked surprised and started crying. I comforted her with a hug since I felt awful for her. Just in time, Jen came back and graciously assisted Barb with cleanup, accompanying her to the bathroom. Barb had changed appearance when they returned. For the remainder of the evening, she looked more softer and more assured thanks to Jen's use of her design skills to provide her with a more natural look. Barb behaved differently. She seems content rather than trying to attract attention, even declining invitations to dance. It was a welcome diversion, and I could sense Jen's influence working in the background. We had a great time as the night came to a conclusion, seeing Barb go with her friends instead of just anybody. On the way home, Jen hummed blissfully, and when we got to her place, she requested that I spend the night. I gave in because I was tired. After checking into the guest room and nodding off as soon as my head touched the pillow, I discovered Jen and Steve sipping coffee at the kitchen table. As usual, Jen looked lovely, but Steve seemed a little under the weather. I gave them a smile. "I'm famished right now. I'm going to make some breakfast now. What about some hot sauce-topped spicy sausage eggs with peppers and onions? Better still, I could cook up some of my favorite morning chili to slather over potatoes and eggs. For the chili to give flavor, they must be cooked to a perfect consistency, not too dry and with soft eggs. Steve, how about a large bowl for yourself? It goes well with a cool beverage." My mouth waters at the very thought. Steve became more and more pale and then bolted for the bathroom. I yelled after him, "Hey, Steve, keep in mind that you don't have to consume the entire case of drinks you brought. What about breakfast now?" Jen grinned, gave me a friendly tap on the arm, and got to work making bagels with cream cheese and jam. Steve looked nauseous again at this. I think I had 4 cups of coffee total. They produced the greatest brand using cutting-edge technology. It even made weather adjustments while it was brewing. He was back on the couch by the time Steve came back. When Jen and I went outside to my truck, "I had an amazing evening last night. I'm grateful. I haven't gone out for fun in a very long time. I find that really admirable about you. Why? Since my life is simpler. To be honest, I make probably a year's worth of money for what Steve makes in a few days. My concerns are employment security, mortgages, and debts. Steve may retire from his job today, and you could live comfortably for years to come. Although they say you can't buy happiness, money can buy you some comfort at least. Do you really believe that I'm interested in any of that? My earnings from modeling are sufficient to allow me to live a worry-free life. I wanted to raise a family and find a nice spouse, so I left the industry. For the past 3 years, I've been trying to get Steve to consider it, but he always says maybe next year." I sense the ticking of the clock. "Really? Do you even look 30? Jen, please take it easy. There's plenty of time for you." That was, ironically, the first conversation that sprung to mind when I heard of Steve's death. Nobody told me outright. I watched television to hear the news, similar to everybody else. When I arrived by car, their house was crowded with strangers. I shoved past the man at the entrance and entered the room when he hesitated to let me in. Surrounded by a handful of her college pals, who were probably the only real friends she had, I discovered Jen in the living room. She appeared disoriented, gazing vacantly as she worked through her loss. She let out a cry and grabbed for me as soon as she spotted me. She was soon in my arms as her friends comforted her gently as she sobbed. Her weeping eventually subsided, and she drifted off to sleep. Her companions gave me appreciative looks. One of them I remembered from another party. We had a good relationship. Jen had always been encouraging, kind to me, and even bought me new outfits for special occasions. She required that I drive her car and act like a gentleman when I first saw her at their house, looking my best. She was joked with by one of her buddies. Not to be flawless, Jen. I haven't really met any rednecks. They seem like they could be a lot of fun. I could feel the heat rising on my face, and Jen's look was unreadable. That night, we had a good time. One of Jen's pals, Sandy, ended up being an amazing attorney. She was honored for her assistance to an innocent man who had been incarcerated for many years. She was currently embarking on a civil lawsuit against the accountable parties. Sandy wanted to ensure that the man who had suffered so much during his unjust imprisonment received a just payout. They eventually reached an agreement through discussions for a sizable sum, which was sufficient to assist him in getting back on his feet. Sandy made sure he had regular access to his daughter, attempting to mend their connection. They became closer over time, and she eventually declared her wish to move in with him. I had a terrific time dancing after the awards banquet, which was an enjoyable experience in itself. I'm sure I stepped on Jen's toes a few times as she was teaching me how to dance properly. I told them in a concise manner that I worked in construction management when they asked, and I was dressed appropriately for the situation. Actually, I was a crew foreman, and I made a respectable living doing so. Because to the GI Bill, I also hold a degree in construction management. After seeing my impressive resume, my managers assured me that I will be given the next management job. While Sandy was interacting with people, I was having a conversation with a lawyer with whom I clicked. Abruptly, I heard her say, "No!" vociferously, and spun around to watch her remove her hand from a man. I approached her nonchalantly and gave her a warm peck on the cheek. "Hello, dear. Having fun this evening?" She frowned and answered, glancing at the man in front of her. "I was." He smirked at me as he stood taller than me. About 65 years old and probably weighing over 250 pounds. He had a lot of muscle, but I could tell that he worked out. I weighed 170 and stood at 510. I saw the disdain in his eyes, having worked hard to gain my muscles. I have known individuals just like him in the past. I just smiled back. "Do you like to talk to each other, brag a little, or go straight to the point?" "Trying to keep things simple," I said. "Whether I win or lose, I've dealt with guys like you and made sure they're not quite the same afterwards. However, it appears that you could manage a skilled cosmetic surgeon. What will it be then? Should you move forward or back off?" He began to sulk, but I held out my hand. "Is it true or false? Stroll or converse? I'll regard any more words you utter as permission to begin." He wavered, looking about anxiously, but nobody appeared to support him. Rather, a lot of them appeared curious to watch how things would work out. He let up and turned to leave. Sandy gave me a startled look, then smiled. "He's definitely been put on notice by you. After this, he will never again be in his former position, and his reputation will suffer. He quits his job in 3 months, I bet." I gave a shrug. It would have been someone else if not me. "Do you want to dance?" she concurred. It turns out that Sandy was quite loving. She leaned in closer playfully not long after we left the gathering. She removed her dress with a nonchalant demeanor after walking a few blocks. Things heated up fast after we parked. Up a spontaneous moment, we made an intense connection that left us both speechless, and I brought her up close. Then I brought her inside her house and started to show her to the couch, but she pointed me in the direction of her bedroom. Once inside, we settled into a familiar rhythm and shared experiences that deepened our bond, lost in each other's companionship when we returned later. We had a nice shower together the following morning, and I assisted with making breakfast. She talked about her thoughts as we drank coffee. She said, "I really like you. However, my career comes first right now. I'm not going to look for anything meaningful until I find a spouse, which should happen in a few years. Is that something you can comprehend?" Her candor was really appreciated. "I understand. You're quite talented in what you do. However, I'm also not seeking a committed relationship. If you want to be friends, that's fine with me." She grinned. "Let's add some extra benefits and make it buddies." Knowing that we each had our own roads to pursue, I laughed and agreed. Later, I spoke with my buddy Jen, who initially seemed a little strange but warmed up after speaking with Sandy. She stated Sandy had spoken highly of your date. You're not jumping into something more serious, which is good. You should not be with her. I admitted with a tinge of sadness. There doesn't seem to be a suitable fit for me out there. I find myself comparing new people I meet to you, and they never quite measure up. Her husband, Steve, laughed, and Jen flushed at the compliment. You've certainly raised the bar. Jen is genuinely unique and feels pleased. As I drove away, I knew they would have their own unique moments. Subsequently, Sandy gestured for me to accompany her to her bedroom. I gently placed her down, and we had a brief moment of silence before I left. As additional people showed in and joined in on the celebration, it appeared as though a gathering was taking shape in the living room. I remained calm until the music began. The volume was turned almost all the way up. Knowing my thoughts, Sandy came back and took a quick look at me. Who are these individuals? I inquired. The majority are Steve's business associates who are here to profit from the circumstance. Some may attempt to entice her back into the world of modeling, while others are from her earlier days. The others are only having a good time. They will use her until she comes to terms with reality, at which point they will move on to someone else. Are you her attorney, correct? Indeed. And Janice, you know, is a physician. That's accurate, she remarked, her face beginning to smile as she realized my strategy. Then you want to inquire as to whether Jen is currently in a healthy environment here. We've previously talked about it. It's not. But there's not much we, as capable women, can do about this crowd. We're thinking of employing security. I got to my feet. I might not be a woman or especially smart, but I might be able to help you save some cash. On behalf of Jen and Steve, I turned off the music to get their attention. I'm grateful that you are all able to attend. Please respect Jen's requests and go. Her doctor has advised rest and tranquility. Please check back at a later time, allowing her time to heal. Who believe you to be? Before I could reply, one of them yelled. Sandy took charge. I doubt that anyone else in the room truly cares about Jenny except for him. If not, then leave her alone. I may have to leave you in the hands of my security consultant. He is skilled at keeping his clientele safe. They had no idea that they had departed, mumbling to themselves till it was just me, notwithstanding the falsity of her allegation. Melody, Jen, Janice, and Sandy. Janice told us that Jen would probably sleep through the night after giving her a moderate sedative. She looked up at me. Jamie, are you able to stay? We would feel more at comfortable with you around, but Melody will be here. Jen will require assistance for some time. After settling into the guest cottage and leaving the women in the main home, I ended up staying for 4 days. Jen gripped my arm tightly during the large funeral, only letting go when it was my turn to be a pallbearer. During the burial service, I was seated next to her. She had run out of tears by then, so she just sat there and the preacher talked to me. The opportunists left us in peace after realizing they couldn't carry out their plans. When we got back, there were around 20 individuals who actually cared for Jen in a quieter home. I went home the next day, having been reassured by Melody and Sandy that they wouldn't abandon her. It was not until I was summoned to Jen's home to read the will that I saw her again. As it happened, Steve had given me a small gift. Her grin was warm as she embraced me, even if she appeared thinner and a little pale. Everything was given to Jen, save a few personal belongings. He desired for me to have his truck, boat, and fishing gear. I read the letter he left me when I came home. Hey, this indicates that I've left if you're reading this. When you receive this, I hope you're in your 60s. However, I feel that if I'm fulfilling my need for you, it will happen much sooner. You meant more to me than words can say. I had a true friend for the first time, one who showed no interest in my belongings, just someone to kick back and joke with. Raise a toast occasionally in my honor and keep me in mind as you're out on the boat landing the big one. One final point. Please take care of Jen for me. She was everything to me, even though I could have been a better husband. As she gets back on her feet, don't allow her make snap decisions. I would have thought she would come to you. Should things become serious, you could want to name your first child Steve. I'm kidding. However, I'm sure you would support her. Consider it. Steve, always your friend. A delivery van arrived in my driveway 1 week later. The guy gave me a note and said he had a lot to unload. Jamie, I realize you probably wish this wasn't happening and that this is an unexpected gift, but I want you to have these items. I'm heading out for a little. Another night in that large, empty house is too much for me. I promise to return, but I'm not sure when. Steve wears these clothes. They shouldn't be thrown away since they will suit you perfectly. Even if you might not wear most of the suits, having the choice is still good. The boots and casual attire will come in handy. Don't interpret this incorrectly, please. If Steve could have predicted this, he would have wanted you to have them. Put them on and think of him. Don't forget that I am also your friend, and I hope you'll allow me to continue being that kind buddy. Jen. For a few weeks, I kept the clothes in my spare room until I worked up the motivation to go through them. 28 suits are unnecessary for who? In the end, I chose to retain 8 upscale suits. I gave the remainder away. Indeed, they would be valued by someone. I preserved all 36 pairs of shoes, pants, and the majority of the casual items. I think each pair cost more than I made in a month. Never again would I need to purchase shoes. Life went on. I used to occasionally go fishing, but I always felt a little bad about using the truck and boat. The truck was too lovely for construction sites, so I didn't drive it too often. Rather, I would launch the boat and inspect the equipment. However, I usually utilized a coal rig that I had given to a buddy, an old Zeb. I can still clearly remember that night I met him. Since I lacked a boat, I fished from the bank at a well-liked location directly beneath a power plant's discharge chute. It was a fantastic site for catfish, and the disturbance brought in a lot of fish. By 11, I had already made up my mind to end the evening. I had enough catfish to last me for months. I had caught 4 of good size and even a monster that weighed 20 pounds. At that moment, my friend Steve emerged from the shadows, faltering a little on the path. "Are things going well for you?" I inquired. He appeared to be inebriated. "Yes, perhaps. Not too far ago, my automobile broke down and I think I made a wrong turn. In addition, my phone died. Could you please call me a ride? That's something I can accomplish. However, we must find a better reception somewhere. While I pack up my belongings, would you mind sitting here? Once we reach a higher position, I will make the decision." He watched as I pulled in my lines, and as I was about to pull in the last line, all of a sudden a catfish hit. Steve stopped by to observe. "Here," grinning, I said, "aid me in capturing this one." Though he said he didn't know what to do, he seized the rod. Simply maintain the line taut to prevent it from escaping. When you notice its head, reel it in, and I'll use the net to catch it. It was a nice catfish, 10 pounds or more in weight. His expression was so precious. Whoa. It has always been my goal to catch fish. It was his first time fishing. It astonished me. He assisted me in returning my equipment to the truck. We then proceeded to inspect his vehicle. It was a wonderful BMW. Tomorrow I'll make a tow request. No, give us a call right now. We are in an isolated location. It's possible that this car won't be here tomorrow if someone finds it here. Give them a call immediately. I have to locate a number. Could I borrow your phone? I dialed a quick number. "Wilbur, I need your help with a BMW near Lookout Point, but it's becoming late. Would you be able to come get it? We'll hold off." I kept the speaker on. How could a BMW get into that? Seems like he got lost. Give me 20 minutes. While we stood in the dark together, I watched 3 males come out of a pickup as it pulled up. They approached my truck and attempted to open the door, believing it belonged to a fisherman. I switched on my lights. "Hey guys, you might want to get over here. Tonight the fish are biting." One of them advised me to mind my own business, and they appeared to have had a few drinks. I calmly took a step outside with my Taurus 357. "You ought to go." "Or what?" "Or else you would regret challenging one of them. You're not carrying a gun." I held it up and fired into the air. They hesitated as the sound reverberated throughout the lake. They made the hasty decision to depart, and as they drove away, one of them clambered onto the back of their truck. Steve looked at me, obviously taken aback. "Had you shot them for real?" "I wasn't required to." They withdrew as soon as they realized I was armed. I would have reacted differently if they had been armed or had pressed the matter. "Wilbur is about to arrive." Wilbur showed up, looked at the vehicle and smiled. "Before you drive, you should get the undercarriage inspected. This is a bumpy road." He gave a card to Steve about his garage. As we saw Wilbur drive away, I asked Steve where he lived. It was not quite 20 miles. He thought about phoning his wife, then decided that he was probably not going to be able to find a ride here. "Now is not the time to bother her. I could drive you home." Sort of on my way, actually. During most of the voyage, he was silent. It proved to be an exquisite mansion. His home. Do you reside here? Yes. Last year I got it from my wife. Would you like to enter? Not in my opinion. My clothes are filthy from fishing and I probably smell a lot. Make a morning call to Wilbur. He's qualified and knowledgeable. He is capable of fixing your vehicle. I didn't go home until I saw him arrive at his porch. When Wilbur checked Steve's car 3 days later, all he discovered was a bent tie rod. Steve picked it up and inquired about me with Wilbur. Wilbur informed him. Jamie is an amazing man. I don't know of any better fisherman than him. He gets called in when the fire department needs fish. He will catch a lot. Steve was waiting for me in my driveway when I arrived home. He had a nervous face. Can we have a little conversation? I've thought of something. Interested. I held out a glass of tea and asked him in. He hesitated a moment before speaking. Fishing is a sport I've always wanted to take up. If you'll teach me, I'll pay you for your time. I took a moment to consider it. He gave off an authentic vibe. All right, we can go catfishing on Friday at 7 if you come by. I won't charge you extra if you cover the bait and maybe bring some refreshments. A man should be able to fish. He was unable to talk due to his excitement. Before he wanted me to meet his wife at his house, it took him approximately a month. Although I was unaware of her appearance, I assumed she would be extremely attractive considering his wealth. I was accurate. I was unaware of her identity because I had never kept up with celebrity news. However, she was arguably among the most stunning women I had ever laid eyes on. She smiled and extended her hand to shake mine, but I hesitantly accepted. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I don't want to upset you, and I have fish bait on my hands, I stated. After a moment of staring, she let out a laugh. If so, will you kindly come in and clean up so I can properly welcome a new friend? Taking extra care to wash my hands, I wanted to leave a positive impression. Once again, I astonished her by staying off her couch. She then proposed that we take a seat at the kitchen table. There I was more at peace, because I remembered that in my childhood days, friends would usually come in through the kitchen, where there was usually food cooking on the stove and freshly baked goods to be devoured. She smiled when I told her stories about my early years, and we got to know one another. She knew I would be coming. Whenever I arrived, she was always ready with coffee. I never remained longer than I had to, even though they kind of adopted me. Although Jen was a lovely woman, she lacked a lot of culinary knowledge when we first met. When they were at home, their maid prepared meals for them, and they frequently went out to eat for business dinners. They adored the pecan pound cake I once brought them. Jen took 2 pieces, while Steve ate 3. When I informed them I had baked it myself, they were obviously surprised. I learned from my mother. I mentioned that it's a family recipe that I can't reveal. I spent some time instructing her in baking. She got really enthused about it, starting with easy recipes like pineapple upside-down cake and banana bread, looking up inspiration on YouTube and Pinterest. Steve soon gained weight from all of her delectable trials to assist her in making a change of heart. I mentioned that her offerings would always be welcomed at neighborhood bake sales. As a result, she joined a few worthwhile organizations and made lots of acquaintances in the neighborhood. She liked that many of their meetings ended up at her house because it gave her something to do while Steve was away on business travels. Her favorite was the neighborhood fire department, which she diligently pushed to enhance with better equipment. She not only gave money, but also gave a lot of her time to assist. Eventually, their department rose to the top of the state for training. She only flaunted her money when she discovered that firemen were at a higher risk of developing cancer as a result of the dangerous materials they work with. After consulting with specialists, she made arrangements for a customized shower system to be constructed for them, backed by a vehicle that would enable them to transfer it. She organized volunteers to receive training on how to properly clean equipment. Fire departments from many regions traveled to observe the process. Nevertheless, most volunteer departments found these setups to be expensive. Thus, Jen became the first chairwoman of a foundation that she founded to support them. She frequently received accolades for her work and made numerous public appearances to gain support and create awareness, but she preferred that the focus be on the cause. When Steve wasn't around, I went with her to a few gatherings, and a lot of people thought I was her spouse. She laughed at it and rarely corrected them. Steve and you have a striking resemblance, particularly after drinking. Simply accept it. Our small community insisted that she be the grand marshal of the annual Christmas parade to honor her accomplishments. One of the largest celebrations the town had ever held, she joined in the procession with her truck and an antique fire engine from 41 fire stations. I refused to ride with Jen even though she asked me to. It's your turn now. It is their intention to honor you, so take it with grace. She was overcome with emotion by the end of the march and the genuine acclaim from the crowd. She later informed me that the accolades surpassed any of her previous modeling experiences. That cold December day was felt by her. She had made a few public appearances and briefly returned to modeling, although she had been absent for 5 months. She then appeared to vanish. When I tried to call her, her number wasn't the same. When I called Sandy, she was just as concerned. She is putting herself first. She thought she was living a good life. Were you aware that she planned to furnish the kids 2 bedrooms? She wanted one for a girl and one for a boy. Should she not get married again soon, that hope may dim. When her aunt, who had reared her, passed away, she responded in the same way. Abruptly. Back then, she disappeared for 6 weeks and then reappeared without giving an explanation for her absence. Jamie, don't worry. She will return at some point. Recall that this is her ideal home. When I saw the house featured on the cover of a real estate magazine, I started to doubt that thought. 3 couples engaged in a bidding battle, and although it was originally listed for $2 million, it sold fast for $2.6 million. I came to terms with the fact that she was now only a fond memory after 9 months. I was doing what I enjoyed most on a Saturday, in my shop. In addition to construction management, I was a furniture designer by degree. One of the reasons I'd choose my house was that it had a big 24x36 metal workshop in back. I had a lot of tools, and the additional room allowed me to get supplies I hadn't previously been able to use. I owned a big planer that could handle wide boards, a steam for bending wood, and a large lathe. To put it briefly, I have nearly all the necessary tools for a skilled furniture builder to produce a high-quality piece. Neatly stacked lumber filled another shed. I had lots of oak, a little pecan, some logs of black walnut, cedar, and a little bit of holly. I was building a friend a rocking chair at the time. Being the tallest sibling at 46, she loved to joke that she was vertically challenged. This chair, which combines elements of a child's and a full-size chair, was made with her comfort in mind. I heard the door open while I was sanding the seat's borders. As most of my friends and neighbors knew, I didn't look up. They normally arrived at the shop first because I was usually busy on Saturdays. After sanding the bottom, I looked up and nearly dropped it, realizing who it was. Jen. Her eyes were sad but brightened when she saw me, and she had a different, slimmer appearance. I was astonished by her first words, which weren't a greeting. Why did I not know that you were a furniture maker? It was never truly discussed. Besides, for now it's only a pastime. Though I'm not sure it could sustain me, I'd want to do it full-time. I'd have to bill a lot for that. And not everyone has that kind of money. Many people I know would be happy to have bespoke furniture made, and they wouldn't mind paying a premium for high-quality pieces. I should have been able to assist you. I paused, searching for the perfect phrase. Jen, you two were my friends, not only chances for business. You might have questioned if I was really your buddy, or if I was just taking advantage of you if I had asked for your assistance. So I didn't tell anyone. Steve was also unaware of it. Had I brought it up, he would have showered me with ideas. As friends, you were worth more to me. See, do you not? Her eyes welled with tears. That's the reason we gave you our best. I was able to express my resentment. Yes, I did notice from all of the calls and visits that I received, I was aware that you wouldn't get it. I had to get out. It felt too empty after a few days in that large mansion. I was also reminded of Steve by your presence. I attempted going back to my former life, but it seemed cold-blooded and superficial. I understand that. But refraining from phoning Sandy or your closest pals, they have to have felt excluded. You should try to make amends if you're returning for an extended period of time. She sobbed after being deeply hurt by her acts. Knowing I would not be working that day, I put away my tools and brought her inside to prepare coffee and serve the pecan pound cake I had made the day before. She listened to 2 pieces, and then began to make phone calls. It took Sandy and the other girls roughly 90 minutes to arrive, sent me outside after giving me a cheek kiss. I fiddled around for a while before lighting the grill. I cooked some chicken quarters that I had marinated the night before, along with some steaks, potatoes, corn, and carrots that had been coated with honey and topped with toasted pecans. The females came out to my terrace drawn by the tantalizing scents. I was pleased of my multi-level deck with a built-in table that encircled a large oak, even if my house was made to the best of my means. Since none of them had been here before, they wandered about taking in the sight of my koi pond, which featured a tiny island, a big lantern, and a carefully planned vegetable garden. To their amazement, one portion was completely covered in flowers, including marigolds, sunflowers, zinnias, daisies, and many types of cosmos. I was astounded by how quickly they started eating when I summoned them to dinner. They laughed at the roll of paper towels they needed and ate with appetites robust enough to defy their outward appearances. We all laughed when Sandy leaned back and gave a loud burp. "Amy, I'm thinking I should reevaluate what I want out of relationships. You prepare food, you look good and make furniture." Jen appeared a little irritated, but everyone else chuckled. The females saw her, gave me their numbers, and tormented her more playfully. I looked across at Melody. "You're married, right?" "I really do love him, and I am. All I wanted is my phone number so we can have some training sessions together. He might benefit from some advice." We unwinded as twilight descended and marveled at the lights I had set up, particularly the lantern on the island that was meant to entice insects to stay off the deck. As I served the pecan pound cake and coffee, I took in the bustling scene. Despite their groans, they consumed every morsel of it. Everybody demanded to know the recipe. Jen grinned. "We apologize, but this is a family secret. I've been pleading with him for about 2 years, but he won't even share it. It will remain in the family," he said. Sandy grinned and turned to face Jen. "Then perhaps, in order to guarantee a consistent supply, we ought to get him a partner. Volunteers, please?" Turning, they all turned to face Jen. She was radiant, but she also pledged to look into it more. As they walked out, there were hugs and kind farewells. Sandy drew me away. "I want to be explicit since I know that men are often sluggish to pick things up. She never returned to get us. She returned to get you. Give her a gentle reminder if you're not interested, in the event that you are. Give it some time. She still has some sensitivity. It caught me completely off guard. Her? Me? Sandy, she's much beyond my pay grade. She is stunning and wealthy. I'm simply a regular man trying to make ends meet. It is not going to work." She gently smacked me across the arm. "Come on, you're not getting the full picture. It doesn't matter to her what you own. Everything she requires is here. Despite everything else, she wants someone who actually loves her. There won't be any tangible motives for the two of you to get together. Her two main desires are a family and a devoted companion. Since our time in college, she has discussed having children. Amy, get up. Take the lead." As they departed and returned inside the home, we waved. "In what location are you staying? You sold your property, I know that." She seems taken aback. "For the time being, at least, I'm remaining with you. Is that okay with you? If you'd like, I can locate another location. However, I truly want to be here. I need to be around sincere individuals, not the virtual reality I've been living in lately. Please." I considered it for a moment, observing her worried look. I sighed after that. "Yes, you are welcome to remain. Sharing my space with one of the most amazing ladies I've ever met will probably require some getting used to." Her smile spread. "I swear not to frequently leave my belongings strewn all around the bathroom. Right now, I'm quite exhausted. Where should I spend the night? It's your bed, hopefully." She was half serious. I took her to the visitor's room. Every piece of furniture in there was handmade by me, from the headboard to the chest of drawers. Everything in light Pycon. The bedposts had elaborate decorations with vines and tiny flowers that I had learned to carve. There was even a vanity designed with a little girl in mind, complete with a heart-shaped mirror. She touched everything as she made her way around the space. At last, she smiled and turned to face me. "Did you create this space just for someone? It appears that you designed this area with a daughter in mind. Have you thought of a name yet?" "No. I've always assumed that my spouse and I would decide on a name together, something that appealed to us both. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair." Her eyes filled with tears. She approached and gave me a strong hug. "I know you'll make an amazing father. Good luck with your evening, Jamie." I watched her for a little while before bidding her good night. Later, something moved and woke me up. At 4 in the morning, I glanced at the clock. Until I noticed her at the foot of the bed, I was wondering what the noise was. It took me a moment to realize that she was still inside the house after being shocked. "Jen, how are you doing?" She jumped onto the bed and rested her head on my shoulder in return. "No, I'm not feeling well. Can I take a little break here? I need to spend some time feeling cozy. When I settle down, I'll go back to my room." She nestled her head against my shoulder as I pushed back the covers. It was good to have her close, and she smelled delicious. I wrapped my arm over her and fell back asleep. She remained there, nestled against me, when I woke up at 8. As I laid there, I was struck by how stunning she looked, even without makeup and with her slightly untidy hair. One eye eventually opened. "How much time have you spent observing me?" "Just a tiny amount." I was more of an admirer than a celebrity. Jen grinned, stretched, and stepped forward. She noticed the reaction I felt. "All right, ahead. For breakfast, I'm all set." We took our showers apart, but it was hard to concentrate because of her being on the other side of the door. To recover my composure, I had to rely on cold water. Jen stayed busy in the cooking area. Everywhere you looked was a pot and pan set. She wouldn't let me assist her, so I drank coffee and observed her movements. Jen had made some delicious crepes. "Where did you get your crafting skills?" "Paris. I attended a 3-month cooking course. 6 days a week for 10 hours a day, we worked on dish preparation. I remained silent for a while for that reason. While she was enjoying her coffee, I cleaned up. I load the larger objects into the dishwasher and hand wash the smaller ones." "Are you this organized all the time?" "Indeed. I learned a lot from my training. Furthermore, since I live alone, maintaining order is simple as long as you are proactive." She changed the subject swiftly. "Jaime, why aren't you married? You would be a wonderful husband. To be honest, I haven't found a partner with whom I would consider getting married. Like many animals, I am. I support long-term collaborations. I must be quite certain. I've been in love before, but it didn't last. Why not? Since she was wed to a different person. It wouldn't have worked out well if I had followed her. Someone who would treat someone else that way is not someone I could trust. In particular, the person they professed to love. Should she have taken that action? Was it possible for me to respect her? It was too bad because she seemed like the ideal partner. When Jen realized I was talking about her, she blushed and grinned. "What are we up to these days? On Sundays, what do you generally do?" "Usually I go fishing or to church." "Do you attend church? Is that something that surprises you?" "Not really, though. It's something I've never heard you mention. Normally I don't discuss it or try to persuade people to agree with me. Is it now too late to leave?" I looked at the time. "Sunday school is over, but if you hurry up and get ready, we can still make it for the sermon." She let out a giggle and got up. "I was a fashion model once. Some pros are not able to adapt as quickly as I can. You've got 10 minutes to get organized." To prevent any reminders, I shaved quickly and pulled out an old suit from my closet. She was ready ahead of me as promised. She looked gorgeous in anything, even this basic knee-length dress with a high neckline. As we entered, heads turned to look at us. After saying hello to my pals and introducing Jen, the sermon started. I thought our present preacher was great. Compared to the previous one, who had created quite a sensation, he was far more composed. As it turned out, he was having difficulties, and when he pulled out a firearm in the middle of a sermon, things got heated. Luckily, the cops showed there promptly, and in the end, he was assisted and was able to thank them from a distance. The sermon today focused on marriage, commitment, and balancing stresses in life with upholding moral principles. Your relationship with your partner should come second only to your relationship with God. Healthy, caring relationships are vital because they support your religion. You ought to be there for your partner no matter what, just like God. While several nodded in agreement, a few appeared a little uncomfortable. Jen seemed to take in everything spoken. The preacher drew Jen into a cozy hug as we were leaving. "I don't think you remember me. My name is Mike Flanagan. The impact your help has had on our family is beyond words. I tell others about you all the time, claiming that you are evidence that angels are among us." Jen grinned despite her intense flush. It was merely a modest gesture. "What is the state of your son? He is in full remission and doing well. He's back with the fire department and his development has impressed the physicians, but for the time being they have him doing less work." Thus, the angel he mentioned was this one. He told of his son's severe illness and what seemed to be a hopeless situation. He saw an angel who reassured him that everything will be okay. Amazingly, his son was admitted to a prestigious hospital right away and received the necessary care without any discussion of prices. He called it a wonder of the modern era. Finally able to express his gratitude, he thanked me for bringing Jen to church and inquired as to whether she lived nearby. Before I could reply, Jen said something. "Right now, Reverend, Jamie and I are housemates. Unfortunately, there is nothing noteworthy about it. All I'm doing is sorting things out." The pastor grinned while blushing a little. "Well, consider what I stated today before making any significant decisions. I've never presided over a wedding for a couple quite like you." Jen assured him she would give it some thought and come back to him. I gave her a smile as we drove home. "Why is that smile there?" she inquired. "An angel has never previously appeared in my life. The street lamp outside last night gave me the impression that it was warm. It was really pleasant." Though she blushed a little, Jen smiled back at me. "Yes, when I get caught up, I can be really spirited, but my emotions are as strong as fire at that moment. What is a good lunch option for us?" I knew the chef at the country club, so we made plans to stop there. They typically had a fantastic buffet. Conversations stopped as we walked in again. I thought I would get used to this eventually. The meal was excellent, and I was shocked by the quantity of food Jen put on her plate. The chef approached our table, and they had a brief but incomprehensible talk in French. He kept introducing himself to the other guests after congratulating me on my good fortune. "What was the purpose of that?" I inquired. "Sweetie, we were just talking about food. He is genuinely gifted." I was astonished by the term of endearment, but I kept my mouth shut. When we got back home, I couldn't help but notice how good it felt to tell her that I had inspired her to complete my rocking chair project. My purpose here is not to meddle in your affairs. Maybe I can join you. I have a few things to accomplish. If that's good with you, I could assist. After taking her laptop out of her car, she entered the spare bedroom. 2 hours later, she arrived into the store just as I was finishing off the assembly. She watched for a while from a stool and then moved to offer assistance. I was grateful for the assistance. You occasionally needed more help with these tasks. After setting everything up, we took a step back. She looked at it appreciatively while I checked for errors. Before I put everything together, I had to adjust the slightly uneven corner of the seat. Overall, everything looked excellent, except one of the back spindles felt a touch odd, so I might need to modify the length for a better fit. I carefully disassembled it with Jen's help, spreading the parts out on a broad table. After moving the seat to the sander, I adjusted it, measured the hole, and cut off a little portion of the spindle so that glue could be applied. In order to guarantee an even application for greater durability, I intended to stain the components first. I requested her advice, not sure how dark to go. What is the appearance of the remaining furniture in her home? Excellent query. The majority of Sarah's furniture was upholstered, but the few wooden items I could recall had a medium tone. To test them, I took out 3 different stains and a scrap piece of wood. Jen gestured to the lightest one right away. This particular one. The wood grain will really pop as a result. She was eager to assist, but I told her not to. Because most novices apply too much stain at once, the color turns deeper than we intended. If you'd like, you can watch me work on the scrap piece or practice yourself. Jen watched for a while. Then, as I was finishing up, put on some gloves and played with the scrap. She learned quickly, since when she was done, there was not a single bare place. Just before sleep, 4 hours later, she radiated beneath my adulation. I fastened the chair and cemented everything together. After a day, I intended to examine the glue and remove the clamps if it had cured. I would wait another day if not. We went to bed in different rooms, and because I was so exhausted, I didn't realize she had entered until the following morning. I basically held her till I had to get up for work because she felt so comforting. I was grinning at work all day. That seemed to irritate him. But I wasn't bothered by even the most annoying subcontractor. I was in a terrific mood until I got home and discovered Jen was not feeling well. "How come you didn't wake me up?" "I figured you might prefer to stay up late. Here, it's best if you let me make the decisions." She realized her mistake with only a quick look at my face. "Sorry if that came across incorrectly. I desired to wake up beside you." Cook breakfast, perhaps. Is that really so bad? Thank you for that. Recall that I live alone. I'm accustomed to looking after myself. Her scowl got deeper. I understand that. Simply put, I enjoy making a contribution. I wish to be of no use to you. I remembered the early moments I'd spent with her as I gazed at her. She required assistance with meals in the beginning since she was really lost in the kitchen. There was a strange feeling. Jen brought up another topic. See, she had dinner and I made it. It smelled amazing, too. I congratulated her and she smiled more, not quite finished. It should take a further hour. After giving the rocking chair one more look, I concluded that it was as finished as it would ever be. I gave Sarah a call. Tomorrow, come pick up your chair. She was ecstatic. She was still beaming as I hung up. The dinner was excellent. Most likely the greatest I've ever had. She grinned when I pointed out flower bouquets scattered over the house. I took them from the garden you had. I hope that's okay. As many as you like, please. I plant more of them every year since I like them so much, and I use them to draw pollinators for my vegetables. That so many of them are wasted feels like a travesty. Others would undoubtedly like them as well. She visited a craft store the following day and purchased several vases along with some ribbon. She'd given her proposal a call to her friend Jan, who had enthusiastically endorsed it. She had buckets and scissors in the garden when I arrived home on Friday. Every bucket was loaded with flowers. She gestured for me to come closer. When you stated that you wanted other people to enjoy your flowers, I hope you meant it. Because we'll be too busy to cook, I placed an order for pizza. Once the buckets are filled, I'll get to work organizing. There were 25 vases, and the way the flowers were arranged, it was obvious she had experience. There were vibrant zinnias, daisies, and a sunflower submerged in the middle. I made an effort to assist, but I quickly withdrew and concentrated on filling vases with water and putting them in boxes when she was finished. After we were done 2 hours later, the home was filled with flowers. The smell of the pizza together was overpowering. We took baths and meals, then nestled in on the couch. I had ginger ale and she had a glass of wine. I believe I've done a pretty good job controlling my excitement. But with all these flowers, what are you going to do? I'm not making any progress. To distribute them, we are go to the hospital tomorrow, beginning in the pediatric ward. Say you'll help me, please. It was not my Sunday as planned, but her look made it difficult to say no. Fine. Her happiness was unparalleled. We shared a moment of intimacy as she tucked herself into my arms. She woke me up from my sleep by telling me it was time for bed. I entered my bedroom clumsily, not noticing she was there immediately behind me. She undressed and spun around, causing her airy gown to rise a little. It gave me a fleeting sight before going to sleep. We will require our rest. It was some time before I could get myself to sleep. Sensing the space between us, she cuddled up and planted a gentle kiss on me. In a matter of moments, she was asleep. I needed an hour to nod off. When we returned to the church the following morning, I noticed Jen and the preacher having a serious chat. I was curious to know what the paper he was giving her was about. We went home after lunch at the country club, where I had to listen to a lengthy discussion in French. When I pulled Steve's truck out of the shed, Jen started to cry a little bit, but by the time we loaded the flowers, she was grinning. I assumed that we would simply leave our 25 vases at the nurse's station. I was wrong. In addition, there were numerous plush toys. Jan and 3 nurses greeted us at the entrance, chattering excitedly as they hurried out to assist with bringing in the toys and flowers. Jen pulled the preacher's list out and set to work setting priorities. When we made our first stop, I was eager to get home. The child was ill and only 5 years old. Jen pulled a unicorn out of the plush toys for the nurse after hearing that she enjoyed horses. It was empty in the room when we got there. She appeared to be left alone for extended periods of time since it appeared that her parents were not able to be together simultaneously. I was furious when I heard that. I couldn't imagine abandoning her like that if she were my kid. The child, in spite of her circumstances, was beaming with joy when she saw guests enthralled with the unicorn and flowers. The little girl asked if she could come see the flowers once she recovered, and Jen told her that I had grown them. She would be more than welcome, as we both assured her. Abruptly, I stood up and strolled towards the nurse's station, disassembling a bouquet to create a garland for her head, something I'd learned a long time ago from my mother. When I put the garland around the child's head, Jen, who had been looking surprised, smiled through her tears. A nurse came in and said she would print some of the pictures we took of her. I still have a picture of me gently holding her while she cuddled up to me. After she passed away, I occasionally looked at it. Recalling the joy we were able to bring her, we had intended to be there for roughly 15 minutes, but we ended up staying for an hour or until her medicine put her to sleep. While I was wiping my eyes and declaring that I had allergies, Jen took some time to redo her makeup that had smeared from tears. After giving 9 more bouquets to kids, we turned our attention to the elderly. I was moved by the child situation, but I was also deeply moved by the sight of the elderly, many of whom were alone. A 94-year-old woman gave us a tight hug and thanked us while crying. Jan took us to the nursery, so I thought we were done. Seeing all the babies made Jen break down, and she came into my arms crying heavily, likely thinking of Steve and what could have been when she calmed down. Janice asked if she'd like to volunteer, saying it would be good for the babies to be held and could help them grow. "Why don't the parents hold them?" Jen asked. "Some of these babies are left here by their mothers who can't care for them. Others may have mothers who struggle with various issues. Some are born needing to go through withdrawal. Those are the ones that really need to be held." Jen said she would come in on Monday morning. The ride home was quiet. Jen changed into comfy clothes, brought a pillow and blanket to the couch, and insisted I snuggle with her. Exhausted emotionally, we both fell asleep, waking just in time for a light supper before heading back to bed. I didn't mention anything when she settled into bed next to me. The next morning, she woke up early to make breakfast, wearing a t-shirt and comfy clothes. I enjoyed the sight as she cooked and felt uplifted. The rest of the day, I thought about it while eating my bagged lunch. I knew she was sending me a message, but I felt conflicted. A relationship with her would be incredible, but I needed to be realistic. She was very wealthy while I had a modest income and lived in a manufactured home, although I'd made improvements to it. It could never compare to the luxurious lifestyle she was used to. I worried that living together might lead to problems, especially given her tendency to disappear when things got tough. I figured we should talk openly about our expectations and concerns, but those plans didn't materialize. When I got home, I found a very upset Jen. "Your pal came by today." I don't know who was more astonished, her or myself. "She got back from her trip a bit early and stopped by to surprise you." "Well, surprise." I took a deep breath. "Jen, why are you so upset? Did you suppose I lived like a monk, pining for something I could never have? I live in the real world, you know. I can't just disappear when things aren't going well and expect everything to be the same when I return." "People have their life too," I added. She appeared stunned. "I know I messed up. I should have handled things better, but I was grieving and trying to figure out my life again. It wasn't proper to vanish like way, but I have a tendency to act without thinking things through. If I had, I probably wouldn't have ended up marrying Steve or even meeting you." I was somewhat aback by that since I had always assumed they were really in love. She noticed that my expression wasn't what I intended to say. Though I really adore Steve, I quickly came to understand that he was more concerned with himself. He loved me, sure, but he also loved to brag about his stunning ex-model wife. It gave him a sense of accomplishment. I had always desired a family, but I knew I would have to make the move after putting it off for 2 years. While sorting through his belongings after his death, I discovered something. A year after our marriage, he underwent a vasectomy. I guess he was going to inform me that he was incapable of becoming a father. I was going to let it go, but it would never have worked. I recalled how meticulous he was about everything back in our courting days. I knew that ultimately we would have drifted apart after that. That took a time to cross my mind. "Jen, I truly apologize for everything you had to go through, and that Steve would act in a similar manner." She let out a sigh. "Regarding your partner, what steps will you take?" "I'll give her a call and most likely visit her shortly. She's been in England on a training course for the past few months. In some ways, she reminds me of you. Yes, she's lovely, but she will never match your beauty. She has achieved great success in her field. The company sent her to this course since she is the first woman they trust enough. And if all goes well, in a few years, she might be a vice president. She puts in twice as much effort for half the credit, I wager. In actuality, she earns more than myself and more than most of her co-workers." I have to get ready now. Most likely I'll get home late. Can you recall how the security system was configured? She simply turned around and drove off without saying anything. Angie wasn't happy after that. For what duration is she lodging with you? A few weeks? Most likely a few more. Afterwards, she will vanish. She might believe I'm like her late husband. Is she trying to find a substitute? I am aware of her identity. She's familiar to everyone who's ever perused a magazine. She appears younger than my little sister, which surprised me as I had anticipated her to look older. She is only 23 years old. Do you have any relationship with her? I sidestepped the query. If you're wondering, I'm not in a relationship with her. She must be quite affluent. What is her net worth? I'm not sure. I have never made a request. She hasn't told me either. What is your worth? That was a delicate subject. She lived in a big mansion, and I had a general sense of her financial status. She enjoyed dressing me in one of Steve's old outfits when she took me to work-related activities. She wasn't content with my work, though. She urged me to quit her job in finance and launch a furniture company. She even had money secured. I told her no, which startled her. I didn't want the same struggles my parents had gone through for me. Though there had been some tension in our relationship, things had calmed down before she left for her trip. That evening, after supper, we spent some time getting back together after our time away. I had to spend the night because it was so exhausting. Jen was gone when I returned home. With a simple shrug, I continued. I was to see her no more for 8 weeks. Jen and I met again at a funeral. It was for a young child who was fighting cancer. Her mother informed me that her mother had died quietly while sleeping. It wasn't until a kind, elderly woman knocked on my door that I learned the news. Hello, I'm not familiar with you, but Julie, my granddaughter, you knew. Could we have a brief conversation? I gave her a tea offer and welcomed her inside. She grinned, grateful for the generosity. She remarked, Your parents must have raised you properly. They made an effort. She smiled sadly at me. Julie died last night. She wanted me to ask you for something before she left. She asked whether you could create her a floral bracelet, something to wear in paradise for her. Her remarks really got to me. Every week I would deliver flowers to the hospital, and the nurses would arrange them. Julie was the one I always went to visit because she would always smile at me. She enjoyed working on the toys and puzzles she had in her room. I went by one day, but I didn't stay long because she was receiving treatment, and I knew she would be exhausted after. Her unicorn toy, which she adored, was sitting next to a flower I had brought. I went to a photographer the following day and requested him to edit a shot I had taken. He combined the finest images till the flowers appeared to be glowing. The following week, after work, I worked on creating a personalized puzzle using the image. I framed it, and there were probably 80 pieces. Though Julie was 5 years old, the puzzle was large for her age, and I knew she would like it. When the puzzle was complete, I carefully cut each piece apart with a utility knife, making sure the edges were clean. I then gave the pieces a little layer of acrylic paint to strengthen them. After I was certain that everything fit flawlessly, I handed it off to Julie in a large satchel with no notes. Her mother informed me that her daughter wept with joy at realizing the identity of the photo after it took her 3 days to solve the puzzle. She had vanished now. Her grandmother gave me an envelope before she left. She desired that you possess this. She duplicated it in her own handwriting, but I helped her write it. It serves as a reminder of her. When her grandmother wasn't around, I managed to remain composed, but as soon as I was by myself and read the note, I started crying. The words, scribbled in a child's handwriting, really got to me. Thank you, Mr. Jamie and Miss Jen, for the puzzle, the unicorn, and the flowers. My buddies are you. Julie, I adore you as well. I created a personalized garland for her the following morning using the finest flowers I had in my yard. I gave the leftover flowers to a friend who works as a florist, and she put them into a casket spray. It was the final bouquet of flowers I gave her. That evening I went to the visitation. With the garland I had created for her head, Julie rested soundly in a white dress. I managed to compose myself until I noticed the purple unicorn curled up in her other hand next to her palm. One of the sunflowers from the jigsaw I had made her was facing upwards. I wept so much that a lot of people assumed I was her father. Jen was there to give Julie's mother consolation. Jen motioned for me to sit next to the mother, who leaned on my shoulder and started crying as soon as she spotted me. Silently, Jen disappeared, and I never saw her again that night. As a pallbearer at the funeral, I experienced the heartbreakingly light weight of the small casket, a sensation that comes only with losing a kid. I went to Jen after the funeral and gave her a bouquet of flowers as they started to lower the casket. "This is our final opportunity to send her flowers. Do you want to accompany me?" Together, we strolled to Julie's mother's cemetery where a few nurses were waiting. One by one, we all tossed flowers into the grave until they were all gone. "Julie, goodbye. It's better that you're in heaven now, and that you get to run and play in fields full with unicorns and flowers." I spoke softly, but a lot of people heard me and it caused more tears to flow. I returned home 3 days later to discover a Mercedes SUV parked in my driveway. Jen came out and she seemed more nervous than I had ever seen her. "Is it okay for me to enter?" She didn't say anything when she walked to the kitchen to make coffee when I invited her inside. She sat down when it was ready, her look difficult to discern. "I need you to listen to me for a few minutes till I finish. Is that acceptable?" I gave a nod. I apologized first for my repeated disappearance. I thought that when I returned, everything would sort itself out. I assumed we would have this wonderful life together and that you would welcome me back. However, upon my return, I discovered that you had not simply ceased to exist. You had your own route, your own duties, and a girlfriend, too. That struck me quite deeply. Do you and she still get along? No, was it my fault? If it would help, I can clarify things to her. You weren't the reason behind it, not straightforward. She thought my level of success was insufficient. She was making 3 times as much money as I was after receiving a significant promotion. She asked me to leave my work and launch a custom furniture company with her, offering her 60% ownership in exchange for funding. "No," I replied. And then things took a turn for the worst. She's reportedly dating a vice president. I'm hoping she's content. Sorry, but it doesn't seem like you're very unhappy. I felt depressed. After 6 months of dating, I wasn't prepared for the kind of long-term relationship she desired. Not in particular on her terms. "You're not married now?" "Indeed." "All right. Let me be your girlfriend, please. Jen. Please allow me to conclude I've given this a lot of thought. We might not be able to work it out. We may come to dislike one another in the end. I am aware of my spoiltness. Since I was 19, I've had everything handed to me, and that has undoubtedly influenced the way I see the world. However, that's one of the main reasons I love you so much. You never allow me to get away with foolishness. You keep me grounded, even though you're kind about it. I believe that if we were together, I would develop personally." She took a moment to gather her thoughts. "I understand that having money bothers you, but I've never defined myself in our relationship by it. I was lucky enough to make a solid living, and after Steve's death, I inherited even more. I'm not going to give that up, and I can't make it change. We could do so much more with that money. Raising children is the first thing that springs to mind. However, we might also greatly benefit our neighborhood. The preacher's kid and Julie's mother are only 2 of the many people in need of assistance. We could help out." My curiosity overcame me. "Why do I require assistance?" "One thing your ex was correct about. You ought to think about entering the furniture industry. Although you're an experienced construction foreman, you have a gift with wood. Rich people would be thrilled to own one of your works. Do you have any idea how much the unique bedroom set you made might fetch? I talked to a few knowledgeable folks about this. What is the estimated cost of the materials and labor for that set?" I gave it some thinking. Although the supplies weren't too expensive, a lot of time was needed. I think I worked on it for approximately 100 hours, approximately $3,500. She gave a little giggle. I spoke with someone who paid $10,000 for a comparable set. She said she would pay $12.50 if you could make one for her after seeing yours, if you made a sincere effort. She may even reach 15. Do you still believe you can't support yourself by doing what you love? That caught me off guard. I began mentally calculating the numbers. I could make between $120,000 and $150,000 annually, depending on a 40-hour work week and approximately $80,000 in profit if I received enough orders. Not too bad. Besides, I would still be doing manual labor. I could tell she was intrigued. This is the strategy. You have my $150,000 loan. The loan has a 10-year term at the prime rate of 4.5%. This is just a business contract, and I have faith that you won't let it be in vain. Whether or not we become partners, I have faith in your abilities." With a sigh, she stood up and cleaned her coffee cup. "That's where. I've spoken my opinions. Now it's up to you. Give me a call if you're keen." Delivering a brief peck on the cheek. She had vanished. She had left several papers on the table, including the loan paperwork and a letter advising that I should speak with a lawyer. On top was her new phone number. After giving it some thought for a few days, I gave her a call. Her joy was evident in the way she spoke. "Hello? Hello, Jen. I've been thinking about our conversation, and if you're free, I'd want to get together. Saturday. Would you please stop by the house at 10? She accepted straight quickly, but I think she was a little disappointed that I wasn't asking her out on a romantic date. I advised her to dress comfortably in jeans and shoes. She discovered me in the yard, surrounded by buckets of fresh flowers, 5 minutes ahead of schedule. I asked her to assist me in arranging the flowers after surprising her with a short kiss. We filled 20 vases jointly, even though the season was almost finished. As she worked, I saw her humming, which made me happy. When I pulled my brand new pickup truck out of the shed, I surprised her. "Steve's vehicle. On the dealership's used lot," she inquired. "In the event that this is a new beginning, I don't want his past to trouble us." She leaped into my arms and gave me a surprise kiss. It was a very special time. As soon as I backed the truck up to my workshop, she was even more shocked. After I load a few items, we'll be prepared to leave. I finished 3 rockers and carefully positioned them in the back, leaving space for padding in between. To her credit, she assisted me in strapping them down without question. Up until we were almost there, we rode in quiet. Jan and I still communicate. She brought up your rocking the infants while volunteering in the nursery. She also requested that I examine a few of the rockers as they required maintenance. I was concerned about you working with a baby in your arms. I thus created these fresh ones. She remained silent, simply grasped my palm firmly and began humming once more. Jan, her 3 nurses, and 2 maintenance personnel were waiting by the entrance when we got there. I transported the chairs to the nursery with the maintenance team where we unwrapped and arranged them. They said they will remove the elderly rockers. John and John delivered the flowers and wrote a list. We spent 4 hours there. I planned to give her a small surprise. I had constructed a rocker for a friend named Sarah, who had recently given birth. When the small, clearly pregnant woman arrived, Jan was ecstatic. She received the chair as a present to rock her infant. Sarah had a pixie-like appearance, with her blonde hair and blue eyes. Her towering spouse seemed to cherish her unconditionally. With a dreamy expression on her face, Sarah took a seat on the rocker. She gave her stomach a soft pat. At last, she rose to her feet using a step stool I had in my workshop. "Come on over here, Jamie. I would like to express my gratitude." There, Jen let out a great laugh and pulled me in for a long kiss. That was something I had to do. "When we get the baby home from the hospital, I'll send you a photo of me holding the baby on this chair. Watch out for 2 more images taken in the future. We've determined that we want 3 kids. They'll all hear about how Uncle Jamie constructed this chair just for us." Jen admired the pictures as I brought her to meet Sarah, and they exchanged hugs. We are now heading to the nursery. For the volunteers, Jamie constructed 3 rockers, and I'll make sure each one receives a thorough testing. Sarah requested the nurse to see to it that Jen got to cuddle her daughter, grinning. Once we arrived to the nursery, the nurse indicated we could make arrangements. Janice and Jen sat down right away. Janice scoffed at me and motioned for me to sit in the 3rd chair. Immediately, 3 nurses emerged and gave me a baby. I was deprived of the opportunity to speak. I was holding a little weeping child all of a sudden. Jen and the nurses grinned and Janice chuckled. "Jamie, rock him and talk to him as you move. The sound of your voice should lull him to sleep." Thus, I did. I told him how much his parents would love him and about his future. When he became older, I brought up Little League video games and even friendships. He stopped sobbing, gave me a few coos, and went to sleep. Glancing up, I saw the other 2 babies quietly rocking and the nurses standing close by, mopping up tears. It was a very touching moment. Taking him from me, I experienced an unanticipated sense of emptiness. On the ride home, Jen stayed silent, which was nice. Thus, I didn't damage it. She gave me a glance as we returned to the house. "Now what? I believe we have completed our good deed for the day. What about a great meal and some entertainment at the barn? To end the day, I would adore to dance a bit. I'll give you a quick peck on the cheek and pick you up at precisely 7 o'clock. Stepping out of the truck, she made her way inside. Was there a future for us? I wondered to myself for the remainder of the afternoon. Would her former life ever be missed? Would I say something that would make her angry once more? Would the cost of living become a problem? Was it all worthwhile? It was, of course. Ever since our first meeting, she has been the woman of my fantasies. She bounced down the steps before I had time to get out of the truck. She accessorized with a similar hat, stylish boots, a button-up shirt, and tight jeans. She laughed as she got into the passenger seat. I'm eager. Since the last time you took me, I have missed this. Once I even attempted to persuade Steve to leave, but he refused, citing lack of dignity. I informed him that having fun isn't beneath dignity, and you should have seen the look on his face. I reminded him that after going fishing, he always returns home with filthy clothes and a foul stench. I was very nearly going alone. When I tried to call, you were unavailable. I hope you had an amazing experience. Please give it your all and demonstrate for us how to dance. Enjoy yourself. She reached over to kiss me tenderly on the cheek. When we pulled into the parking lot, I could feel her excitement. It was like being in the past again. Everyone seemed to forget about the car we arrived in as soon as Jen got out of my truck, which was fully decked up. It was easy to catch up with my buddies. It was like we had seen each other yesterday. Barb was there with her new husband, and after a long time apart, they embraced like old friends. She posted photos from her wedding, and it was obvious that she had heeded our suggestions. When he took a step back, her spouse revealed himself to be kind, accomplished, and utterly devoted to her. Barb told Jen that, before to their marriage, she had told him about her background. For a moment, he was silent. I told him, and she opened up. I take it you've moved on? All of it is behind you, I inquired. I informed him that it was. I informed him that I would honor any arrangement he desired and that I loved him. That's fantastic, though. Are you ready to book a date? It's not. She was now being quite emotional. Most importantly, my kids love him. In particular, my oldest. His father recently left, but the fathers of my other two are still active. When he's home, my man and the boy are best friends. Jen gave her husband a big hug upon his return and thanked him for being the companion Barb needed. I hope the two of you have a happy future. His expression brightened. I'm grateful. I promise to dance at your upcoming party. When I told Jen that it was a traditional Southern method of showing gratitude, she smiled and raised an eyebrow at him. Prepare your dance shoes. I hope you'll use them quickly. As we all applauded, I turned to face her. She seems prepared to confess her feelings to everyone. We had an amazing time. Jen was in our group and danced with most of the guys, but she drew me onto the dance floor whenever the band played a slow song. She no longer had that polished appearance by the time we departed. Her makeup had faded, her hair was wild and free, and her blouse was moist. She seemed so natural and easygoing, in my opinion. Just thinking about what her fashion buddies would say made me smile. She saw the smile on my face. Why are you grinning? How amazing you look at this moment. She snuggled closer in the truck as we drove to her house, apparently pleased with it, holding on till we got to her driveway. She didn't invite me in because she knew I wanted to take my time, but we ended up having some good times together in the vehicle, which made the environment a little heated. We were playing about for a while when she finally unzipped her shirt and showed me a gorgeous top below. She laughed as she slipped out of the truck and hurried into the home, saying, "Don't touch this until I say so." She knocked on my door bright and early the following morning, full of enthusiasm. She hurried past me before I could say anything, even though I staggered to the door. "Take a shower. Prepare. I'm going to prepare breakfast. You're going me fishing after that. I'd like to check out the fun." I connected up the boat after getting ready while she was finishing breakfast. While I was attempting to eat, she kept asking me questions. At last, I held up my hand. "Let's hold off until we're in the water, Jen. I won't have to respond to the same query twice that way." She abruptly stopped speaking. I didn't realize I'd called her honey until we were in the truck. I docked the boat and got it in the water. After that, we went to get worms at the bait store. In addition to getting some drinks for the cooler, I made the decision to start her off slowly. I opened the boat and eased it out till we were past the no-wake area. Steve had picked out a fantastic yacht, mostly thanks to my recommendations. Jen laughed as the wind swept over her hair as she stood next to me. I arrived at the small cove that I was picturing. Turn off the engine and place us roughly 20 feet away from a fallen dead pine by using the trolling motor. I had a normal rig set up and coached her through every step because I knew that fish would seek cover there. How a hook is tied to the line, what weight she should use for her caulk, and how to use the worm to bait the hook. She kept her squeamishness to herself. I'm about to cast it. Observe me. When I turned the rod, the cork fell not too far from the tree. I gave her the rod and instructed her to watch the cork. She should reel it in and pull back steadily if it went under, maintaining the line's tension to prevent the fish from escaping. I sat back and watched after that. It's not going to fish for you. Not that I'm here to fish. To help you learn how to fish, I'm here. Do you have your cork in sight? Moving in the direction of the tree. Keep it from becoming tangled. It will sink as soon as it crosses the edge. That's precisely what took place. As I had instructed, the rod bent and Jen let out a squeal. A few minutes later, I successfully catch a nice bluegill with the net that weighs approximately a pound. Fantastic work, Jen. For this species of fish, that one is a fair size. Can you prepare it for me? Naturally. But what if you managed to catch enough for us both? For the next hour, we worked the cove, going slowly down the bank. Only one of the 4 bluegills she caught was large enough to be kept. She wanted to make one last cast at the tree where she had been training, and though she had to cut her line once when it became tangled, her casting had gotten better as we were getting ready to move on to another location. She landed about a foot away from the tree, having cast flawlessly this time. The cork quickly sank, and when the rod doubled over, Jen nearly yelled. I waited with the net, catching the fish just before it shook the hook loose, while she fought the fish for 10 minutes. When she inquired as to whether it was suitable to eat, she had caught a lovely bass that weighed roughly 2.5 pounds. We put it in the live well after I informed her that it was. We added 3 additional bluegill to our catch after exploring a different cove and discovering a school of them. By that time, it was nearly noon, so we decided to take a break. They don't bite well when it becomes too hot. To catch more, we'd have to come back later, might we? Yes. But would you rather return home and then go again? No, I want to remain by the lake. I can learn how to operate the boat from you. To get acclimated to steering, I had to practice a few laps in a large cove, describing the water's regulations. We got to the main waterway, and I let her go faster. She was steering like a seasoned skipper 1 hour later. When I informed her that it was time to return to the marina, she appeared dissatisfied. I clarified that we would have to use the trolling motor if we didn't return shortly. We're about at empty. She strolled down to the pump, and the attendant assisted in filling it up for an additional 20. He let us park it in a slip so we could go have lunch. We promptly enjoyed a few burgers at the marina's lovely grill and spent some time lounging in the air conditioning. We were getting some attention, but by now I was accustomed to it. Jen had her hair in an untidy bun and was sporting shorts and a nice top. She said nothing, but I felt I recognized a woman staring at her. Her thoughts were practically audible to me. Is Jen Foster there? However, why would she be at this place with this guy? But lucky guy. I concurred wholeheartedly. Jen shocked me by putting on her swimsuit and standing on the dock. It was compact but elegant. Everyone looked, even the gas station worker who leaned too close and fell into the water. Jen noticed, and she grinned broadly. Then, to my amazement, she kissed me once before getting into the boat. Now let me take the wheel. You appear a little preoccupied. After an hour of speeding around the lake, she gave the wheel back to me. Take us to a lovely place. I escorted her into a small cove I had discovered near the lake's mouth. It was necessary to duck to pass through the low-lying trees. However, as soon as we got there, it revealed a stunning location with a long beach on one side. Pushing the boat into the beach, I tied it to a big branch. She quickly put 2 towels out in a spread position. She took off her shirt and threw it aside as she lay down. Please give me a massage. Yes, I did. It was among my life's most memorable moments. She begged me to keep massaging her legs and back when I had finished. My hands were shaking a little. She flipped over after I was done, and her playful nature astonished me. You shouldn't disregard these, she remarked, laughing. That is not a good thing. This is how you're going to unwind. Normally, I don't wear a lot. The boat is obstructing the access to the private area where we are. Before they can see us, we'll hear them approaching. She made quiet noises of pleasure as I continued to rub her shoulders. I started at her feet and made my way up to her thighs, admiring her flawless skin the entire time. Don't stop there, please. That's too far for me. After that, I wouldn't be able to stop. She gave me a playful chest rub. Do you really think that spending time together in this moment would be so bad? Only us. I'm sure you would enjoy it. I got up and bent in to give her a kiss. I heard someone giggle just as I started to straighten my shorts. She hurried to put her top back on while I hastily pulled them up. A crimson canoe carrying two females who appeared to be in their late teens passed by. I apologize for interrupting. This place is really very lovely. I desired to present my friend. One remarked, feeling a little uncomfortable, "We'll leave now. You are welcome to spend some time with us." Jen smiled and continued, "We have drinks if you're thirsty." I waded into the lake and enjoyed its freshness. I grabbed some snacks and drinks and got into the boat. Jen engaged them in conversation for a while as they exchanged anecdotes. They were obviously very close. They exchanged curious glances with one another. They were enthralled with Jen and barely paid me any attention. Jen arched an eyebrow at me, so I walked deeper into the cove with a fishing rod in hand. Before heading back, I was able to capture a couple of good fish. When I arrived, Jen was sharing her feelings with them and offering them comfort. We returned to the main river, leaving them to their time. Right now, I bet they're having fun at the beach. I grinned as I stated, "No, I don't think so. For them, it's undoubtedly a mixture of emotions. While the other is more seasoned and committed, the first has only recently begun to recognize her sentiments." Did they actually tell you all of that? Someone knew who I was. I was able to decipher their mutual words. They were also interested in models. What exactly did you say? I explained to them that although a lot of models have different preferences, it's not as easy as people may assume. While those events are real, they weren't my path. I simply want the truth about who I am. I was glad of her candor rather than feeling uncomfortable. We kept fishing until almost dusk. When we got to the dock, our catch was amazing because Jen had caught a lot. For her first time, she did a good job handling the truck when I let her back it up. We had a lengthy conversation before she got into her car, but she wanted to assist clean the fish before departing. I discovered her sitting on my steps when I returned home from work later. Her meal of fish was ready. I demonstrated how to create side dishes and sauce for her. I made sure the fish was excellent when I prepared it. Once we finished cooking, we ate, cleaned up, and cuddled up on the couch. We were both tired after the large supper, and I promptly fell asleep. The aroma of coffee awakened me up, and I saw her walking around the kitchen. "It is best that you prepare." She said, "It's almost time for breakfast." I was seated at the table 20 minutes later, savoring the finest omelet I had ever eaten. I questioned her about her daily activities out of curiosity. She hesitated, looking a little surprised. "Do you find it bothersome?" "Not at all. You simply seem to have too much energy to sit around all day. Sharing is completely okay, but if you would rather not, that is also acceptable. I just wanted to know how you manage to stay entertained." She smiled again. "I do a lot of volunteer work. I normally rock babies for a couple of hours at the hospital. Everyone is curious about the source of those rockers. They even saw one spouse attempting to smuggle one out the door and another trying to slip one into his wife's chamber. I understood that to be a subtle dig at me for not signing the loan documents. Though she didn't press, she did occasionally bring it up. "What other activities do you engage in?" Jen had a shy appearance. "I talk to my financial advisors for a couple hours every week on the phone and internet. I've known a few individuals whose money vanished quickly due to poor money management. I have 3 different advisors because of this. She obviously didn't want to bring up her money with me. Well thought out. I have a lot of faith in my friends, but not always when it comes to money." A sigh of relief left her. "In addition, I occupy a few boards. In addition, I'm employed by the fire service. My primary objectives seem to have slipped a little, even though I stay rather occupied." "What is that?" I asked. Her sly smile said it all for me. "Attending to you. I want you to realize that you deserve my love and that I am that person. I believe I'm getting better, but occasionally you might be a little slow. You are important to me. I don't want to question that. Examine the time. Don't speak. One last kiss before you go to work. Proceed now. I felt a little lost after I left. Her mouth still on mine. It was difficult to focus on work. When the guys saw, they began to joke around. When Jen dropped by shortly before noon, they quickly became silent. As she got out of her automobile, everyone stopped what they were doing to observe her. Your phone is missing. How can I find out what you want to have for dinner? I also brought you lunch, too. She gave me a short kiss, handed me a thermos and a bag, and left. After a little period of silence, one of the guys spoke up. Jamie, you're doing well there. One more was added. She resembles that lucky supermodel. I smiled. Yes, she does hear that frequently, remarked my concrete guy. To be with you, though, she must be a little puzzled. Is she able to see anything? No, we don't. She most likely knows more than we do. She didn't drive just any old automobile. She is incredible, sound monetarily. She enjoys fishing as well. She is my perfect companion. Even as I was speaking those words, I gave them my whole faith. She was more than my ideal companion. She was very unique to me. I suddenly realized something. I mean, she was the perfect mate, but how frequently do the best-case scenarios work out as planned? Few. The majority of fairy tales don't start out quite this way. Consider Cinderella. Her stepmother made her dance in agony in one rendition. Many of the stories had obstacles designed to keep kids safe. Once I went home, things became more complicated. I sighed at a scene I knew well. Mom. We were not always on the same page, mostly because Mom wanted me to get married, have a family, and settle down. I pondered her thoughts about Jen. I went in the back door as usual, and to my astonishment, there was laughter. I overheard Jen conversing. That explains how she got a lobster on her. When I walked in, they halted, but they still had bright smiles. It appears that you've met Mom, Mom stated. Indeed. It's unfortunate that I had to come here unaware that he had a significant other. Would you ever like to give us a tour? Then the story took an unusual turn. Mom, don't be too hard on him, please. He moves a bit slowly. Mom chuckled a little. Honey, I would hear about you between the second and third child if that was his choice. I am happy that you are in his life. Worth the work is this man, and just call for backup if things get very hard. You must not have met his grandmother yet, is I right? Jen had an astonished expression. I became aware that I had not talked much about my family. Perhaps now she would get it. No, but I'm eager. Are you able to join us Sunday for lunch? We could make a fish fry or better yet, have Jamie grill. Just don't show up before 1, please, so we can get back from church on time. Mom's smile threatened to break my brains, I thought. We're going to be there. My sister and a couple of his cousins might accompany me. Meet the majority of the family at once. Please let me know how many so that I may make arrangements. I relaxed and watched them talk, largely disregarding me, while Mom prepared to go. She hugged Jen tightly. She turned to face me, gave me a cheek kiss, and mumbled, Son, she's a keeper. Be careful not to let go of her. Jen merely grinned. We didn't really need dinner because we weren't that hungry. Following the cleanup, we curled up on the couch. I felt her disappointment when, after a few moments of intimacy, I pushed her back gently. I bent down to plant a second kiss. Love, I have a discussion I'd like to have. Being near you interferes with my ability to think clearly. Jen seems a little uneasy. What topic would you like to discuss? Concerning us? She appeared even more nervous now. How about us? Something wasn't quite right. I'd like to talk about our relationship. However, I want to talk about business first. I've made the decision to trust your business judgment. Today, I also signed the loan documents. I also offered a month's notice to my supervisor. I'll be co-owner of J&J Custom Furniture Designs in 30 days. Her expression brightened. That's wonderful news. I was afraid you wouldn't follow through. What does the name imply, by the way? It stands for Jamie and Jen. You and I will both be involved in this. You'll take the initiative, I'm sure. You are skilled at negotiating and networking. I'm skilled at making furniture. I think that's fairly fair. Well, if you want to come along. Naturally, I will, my dear. However, that will be your matter. No, it won't. I amended the agreement. I shall own it equally with you. I consider your expertise to be a crucial component of our collaboration. If we disagree on this, the transaction is off. Are we in agreement? Rather than argue, she retreated into my arms. I could tell she agreed by the look on her face and the few happy tears she shed. All right, The amended papers are with your lawyer. As soon as you can, sign them. I'll be waiting with a pen outside his workplace tomorrow morning. Fantastic. Let's talk about personal issues now. You know, as soon as we met, I was drawn to you. I had no idea you were so well-known and successful. All I could see was the world's most gorgeous woman, positioned before me. I discovered that you were even more amazing inside as we became closer. My ideal companion was you, even in the event that you were not wealthy. She appeared anxious as she sat on the couch's edge. As you are aware, I'm a little outdated, so during Steve's life I saw you from afar. Now that Steve has left, my ideal companion is here, accessible and in close proximity. I'm relieved that we haven't moved our relationship forward just yet. I can tell our kids to hold off until they are really committed by looking into their eyes. Perhaps that will make sense to them. I barely had time to say anything before she knocked me off balance and flipped the sofa. Her breathing increased and her eyes gleamed as she fell on top of me. Declare it. Declare it. Though I really wanted to kneel, this will have to do. Jennifer, will you marry Marianne Foster? Indeed, you stopped me in my tracks. Oh, I see, you're done. Really, I didn't plan to pop the question without a ring. This weekend together, we'll choose it. No, you'll decide on it. I'd like something lovely, but it needs to be within your means. I've received priceless gifts in the past, but this time, I want something that truly embodies our love. What it is doesn't matter. I'll happily wear it. Are you following? I might as well get started right away. Yes, sweetheart. She gave me lots of playful kisses. Well done, boy. You'll be incredibly simple to lead. I succeeded in moving her away from me and replacing the sofa. However, hold on, I need your attention. On this, there will be no disagreement. Though Jen's eyes grew wide, she accepted my hand with a smile. First off, even if I may never be wealthy, I don't mind at all that you do. When we have a family, you will desire things, and I'll let you spend money on those things. But I want our kids to grow up healthy, not pampered. They ought to value saving and working hard. A prenuptial agreement is something else I want. I had one put together by your lawyer. To be honest, I never desired your cash. I want it to be known that if we don't work out, I keep what's mine, you keep what's yours, and there will be an equitable division of everything we create together. I don't want to fail at this. You're not, I'm sure of it. Thus, it will remain a piece of paper that we ignore. Do you agree? Could we perhaps? Nope. Accept it or reject it. I want you to know that you are important to me, not your fame or fortune. She was finding it difficult to hide her laughter, so she looked down and murmured, Yes, dear. All right. You'll desire a larger home, I'm sure. When our family expands, and that's okay with me. All I want is not a place like the one you used to have. I desire a happy, loving home. I concur. Yes, sweetheart. For the time being, I only ask that we remain here until we launch our business. Everything in this place is wonderful. Simply put, a house is a place for love. I therefore feel at ease in our present residence. That caught me off guard. She desired to live in a small space even though she had lived in large residences. She saw my look. The locations I have lived were not homes with Steve. They served as declarations of achievement. Being impulsive with workers was challenging because anything may happen at any time. A spot where I can wake up in the middle of the night without fear is what I'm after. In addition, I grew up in a smaller-than-now house that I cherished. You must keep in mind that I wasn't always affluent. I was found at the age of 15 after leading a normal life. It's a word I've never liked. Okay, so I'll start searching for a symbol of our love tomorrow. It might not be a simple diamond. They've always seemed a little boring to me. If it's not to your liking, I'll try again. Think about that for a moment. In order for us to genuinely determine whether we are a good fit, I want to give our engagement some time. Let's work through any peculiarities I may have that you find unpleasant before committing. She grinned. That makes sense, I concur. You'll find my behaviors interesting, I'm sure. Each of us will make an effort to comprehend the other. All right, enough babbling. She smiled and said, Let's take our relationship to the next level. To be honest, I had never before experienced being close to someone I loved that much. It had nothing to do with her looks or riches. It was the bond between us. She meant so much to me that every moment felt unique. We spent the evening getting to know one another better, exchanging tales and savoring the quiet times. Late into the night, we found ourselves chatting and laughing and making memories that we would both treasure. I became aware of how much we had in common when she expressed to me how much she valued the little things. Eventually, we hugged each other to sleep. She woke me up happy the following morning. A new day has begun. Let's get things going again. I have to get ready for work, she said. I looked at the time and replied, Not right now. I informed your supervisor over the phone that you wouldn't be in. You are free to skip this day. Let's tidy up and get ready for the day now. After spending the morning lounging together, she kissed me goodbye and sent me on my way to run errands. I was quite happy as I was leaving in my car. Finding a ring didn't need to be my task. I had prepared ahead of time. I had a custom-made ring made with a diamond cut like a heart and 2 tiny emerald hearts on either side. The writing inside read, and the bands were made to look like keys. My heart will always be in your hands. I handed it on to her. She spent the remainder of the week giving me tight hugs and crying happy tears due to her overwhelming passion. We took our time savoring the final blooms of the year. We created flowers and gave them to our pals. When Jen showed Janice the ring, she was excited but not overt. Before long, the entire group of nurses embraced to rejoice in the wonderful news. I made sure to thank Janice and the nurses for their hard work when we were distributing the bouquets. We softly ended the day by holding newborns and giving the leftover flowers to elderly people and youngsters. Jen shed a tear when Janice said, I would make a great father one day. Jen wanted to have a peaceful evening to celebrate our coming home later. We laughed, chatted, and made plans for the future together. We went to church that Saturday and sat with friends. The congregation soon learned of Jen's engagement, as she was excited to show off her ring. Noticing us right away, the pastor congratulated us and said he would be happy to conduct the ceremony. We took an hour to leave after church because everyone kept stopping to congratulate each other. Several husbands gave me kind advice, saying that this was simply the start of a new chapter in my life. My family showed up later that day. My aunts, cousins, and Mother Grand were all thrilled to hear the news. We celebrated all day long, surrounded by happiness and love. We didn't prepare food. Jen placed a pizza order just now. I worked on a couple of rocking chairs in the workshop after an hour or so. An hour later, Mom arrived, got herself a drink from the refrigerator, and settled onto one of the finished rockers. At first, I wasn't sure how to feel about her. She's gorgeous and well off, could live anywhere in the world with anybody she pleased. However, I believe she genuinely loves you, my dear. She really wants a family, especially with you. I see the most gorgeous grandchildren in my future. That is not hyperbole. Jamie, good job. She finished her drink, stood, and hesitated at the door. 2 items. Hear me out, show that woman some respect, and by the time the first grandchild arrives, I anticipate owning one of these rockers. I was limited to smiling. That worked for me when Jen decided on a June wedding, which was 9 months away. I handed in my notice at work and then went home to set up our shop. Jen proposed that our trademark piece might be rocking chairs. We set up an assembly line and took custom orders in addition to the uniqueness of each rocker. Jen insisted on magazines and advertisements aimed at high-end residences. In the advertisements, she even posed. In one, she was shown sitting in a chair with a newborn, and in another, she was shown holding another child in her older years, while still looking stunning. Pricing was difficult for me. Using local oak, the best available, increased my average cost per chair to around $700. Additionally, there was a price rise for special orders. As I was going to charge $2,000, Jen beckoned me to the computer. Our regular rocker was marketed for $5,000, with additional fees for special designs. She had established our prices. That is excessive. Nobody is going to pay that. With a smile, she turned the page. With only 1 day on the site, 19 orders have already been placed. I wouldn't worry excessively. Using our approach, I could build around 2 chairs a week and 3 if I worked extra hours. But I wasn't willing to rush. I wanted to fulfill our clients' expectations since they deserve nothing less. The customer called us just as we were about to send our 10th chair, requesting a signature. Jen nodded, but when the customer asked for my signature specifically, she flushed. Every chair has a special quality, an inconspicuous number engraved on it. Although we didn't advertise this function, I was forced to testify about it in a lawsuit years later. The complaint stated that our advertisement led them to believe that a chair wasn't real. I looked it over and made sure it wasn't one of mine. With a letter of provenance in hand, the seller went after the retailer from where they purchased it. Jen had extended an invitation to her aunt, Aunt Beth, to stay at our house. We didn't get along at first, but eventually she helped out in the shop, mostly with the computer and paperwork. Jen oversaw our money and made sure everyone received their weekly paychecks on time. Jen started helping out more with the construction side of the company, but I was still nervous about her around power equipment. She concentrated on assembling and completing. Her work clothes of jeans, a t-shirt, and an apron took some getting used to, but we quickly increased production to 4 chairs per week. One day, Jen's rich friend paid her a visit. She met him in elegant attire and gave him a tour of the shop, always acting like a pro. She displayed a second bedroom set up for a girl after showcasing the custom-made 4-poster bed and accompanying furniture I had manufactured for her. He had cake and coffee, then made his plea. Jen is aware of my divorce. She is unaware that I was granted custody of my daughter. Her mother's problems prevented her from being raised. The 7-year-old enjoys lounging in the personalized rocker. As I read her bedtime stories, I placed my order for number 29. More than any therapy I could have afforded, that chair has brought us closer. She has expressed her desire to receive her own rocker on her 9th birthday. I want to get her a brand new bedroom set as a surprise. Is that something you can do? I'll pay any further expenses. Additionally, you have 7 months. Discuss it with Jen and report back to me. Recall this after you have your own child, preferably a female. Everything is subject to change. Taking the leftover cake, he departed. And after that, Jen and I settled down on the couch to have a quiet meal. How do you feel? Jack revealed that even though he is almost a billionaire, his most prized possession is a rocking chair that I created. Are you going to make another one? He inquired. Advise Aunt Beth to inform everyone about the 6-month wait period for a chair. It will take 4 months of concentrated work on my part, but we can surely do it. Speak to him again and tell him we're all set to go. We could require some information regarding his daughter. What kind of things does she like to do? What is it that she doesn't like? While my goal is to create something she won't outgrow in a few years, I also want to incorporate a few little things that will make her happy. She grinned and planted a big kiss on me. Fantastic. Think of it as preparation for the day we have children. We have ideas for the first girl already, but in the future you should also consider guys. We hadn't talked about how many kids she wanted, but I knew she wanted kids. What number do you believe we ought to have? She looked down, flushed. As many as I can manage, but if we spread them out, perhaps 3 or 4. When I answered, her eyes brightened. Excellent response. As soon as we tie the knot, we should begin our plans. Our first child should probably arrive 9 months after the wedding, in my opinion. I was taken aback when Jen asked Jack to bring his daughter to the training. I wanted to make sure that the rocking chair I had ready for installation was ideal for her. She could use it for a longer period of time because it was about full size. She was an inquisitive child, observing Beth and Jen as they discussed various topics. Jack used the occasion to talk about my plans. Her favorite bedtime tale told about a princess who forged friendships with dragons and their fantastical exploits. So I embellished the back panel with a princess astride her beloved dragon among vines and flowers. It took me a few tries to get it perfect, but seeing her smile made it all worthwhile. Jen contributed to the design of a vanity with a heart-shaped mirror surrounded by a dragon and a 4-poster bed with a canopy. As soon as everything was finished, we transported and assembled the parts right before Allison returned from school. Jack took a video of her response. She started out by standing in the center of the space and slowly rotating around. She then let out a happy squeal and dove onto the bed, simultaneously sobbing and laughing. She found a black walnut dragon I had carved the following day, polished to a glossy sheen that seemed to gleam. Beside it stood a princess fashioned of vivid white holly, striking a lovely contrast with the black dragon. We went back to work on the rocker backlog, which had grown to almost a full year's worth of orders. We got a copy of Architectural Digest 6 months later. A story about Jack's estate and Allison's bedroom were featured on the cover. There was also a picture of Allison clutching the princess and dragon. Jack emphasized how each piece in the room was designed by renowned model Jen Foster and her fiancé, giving it a distinctive feel. He talked about how he found us after buying one of our rockers. Various clients, including European aristocracy, Middle Eastern sheikhs, and American millionaires, contacted us on our business phone, wanting to order custom-designed bedrooms. Fantastic work, Jamie. Long after you and I am gone, I have no doubt that daughters after us will treasure this. There are no words to describe how much I respect what you do. It surprised me. Me? You're a global networker who made it on your own. For what reason would you find me admirable? All of my achievements will be numerical and abstract. I acknowledge that I'm talented at money, but things in life are not static. Our two legacies will not outlive your creations. Love is more valuable than money, even though everyone aspires to be wealthy. A child cannot be rocked by $1 notes. More warmth and affection are represented by your work than by anyone's money, even mine. Jen has a keen perspective on things. What impression does she have of me? You're the most sincere person I've ever met, she said. A man who never wavers from his convictions and never puts his family second. My friend, you're truly exceptional. That exchange stuck with me for some reason. The next weekend, Jack shocked me by asking if Jen and I could go fishing with him and his daughter. We went out on the boat with them. Allison was loving Jen's instruction, and she glowed with delight as she hooked her first fish. Jack also managed to catch a few and ultimately bought a medium-sized pontoon boat. Every Saturday, he enjoyed taking it out on the lake with the company of one mother in particular, a widow whose daughter was close to Allison. Jen, who comes from a less affluent home, remarked that we might have to create another bedroom before long. If you weren't devoted, fishing stopped when winter arrived. Even though I cherished it, I didn't want to brave the cold. My two buddies continued to fish through the ice, frequently clearing their lines. Thank you, not at all. Jen talked me into going on a vacation in January, and we took a plane to Vail to go skiing. We also invited Mom and Aunt Beth, who delighted in shopping as we headed to the slopes. The condo we stayed at was really nice. Normally, I would have asked how much it cost to stay there for a night, but my curiosity got the better of me. Nothing is ours to own, honey. That caught me off guard. Jen laughed at my expression. It's a financial commitment. When not in use, we rent it out, with the proceeds going to volunteer fire stations in the area. We even provide complimentary stays for firefighters during the off-season. It's all tax-deductible as well. We decided to go to an upscale country western club one night after Jen found it online. She'd even bought my mom and Beth cowgirl costumes, complete with hats. The men who asked my mom to dance didn't seem to mind that she looked amazing, even though it was a little weird at first. Some were in their 60s and some as young as 25. Beth still had lots of dance partners even though she wasn't as showy. We all went home exhausted, and when Jen saw that Beth had returned without her bra, she burst out laughing. Beth ran to her room and her mother just grinned. Remain gentle with her. She hasn't gone out in years after her husband's death. Well done, I say. Jen gave a small jest. Mom, did you also have a wild time? Mom smiled. If you're wondering, no, I didn't lose my bra, but those matching underwear will be missed. Good night, young people. Jen was rolling around laughing while I sat there with my mouth hanging open. When March arrived, Jen was browsing the seed catalogs. Depending on how much she ordered, I would always plan our flower beds for the upcoming season. I anticipated having to greatly expand the garden. After that trip, Mom and Beth grew close, and they joined a book club together, which increased the number of friends they had. The occasional girls' night out resulted from it as well. Jen didn't usually go along with their antics, but she did go along a couple of times and returned laughing. Jen gave each of us a really nice computer with CAD software for furniture design as a Christmas present. It proved to be an excellent instrument. Although I wasn't very tech-savvy, I quickly became one. Jen answered the door when someone knocked on the shop one day. I watched her lead a young woman into the tiny workspace we shared. After about 20 minutes, they shook hands and Jen introduced her to me. Honey, this is Molly Graham. She's the first employee of J&J Custom Furniture. Molly was a junior in college, majoring in interior design with a focus on furniture. She was looking for a summer internship, and we were her first choice. She seemed surprised no one else had thought of us. She was there on a scholarship and needed part-time work, so we gave her 20 hours a week to start. She didn't just fit in. She brought in new ideas that improved our process. With her help, we were able to produce almost 2 hours a week. The only disagreement we had, was when she wanted to mechanize some of the work. I quickly turned that down. If we mass produce, we'll lose what makes us stand out. Our customers know that their rocker is handmade with every spindle turned by hand. They can customize it to make it unique. She didn't fully agree, but understood the custom seat idea was actually Jen's. She had once bought a high-end bicycle that came without a seat. You had to order a custom seat based on your exact measurements, which cost an extra $1,500. I was amazed at the price. Do you still have it? No, I gave it away, but it gave me an idea for our business. We adopted a similar approach. We provided customers with a pouch of foam that activated when shaken. They would sit on it for 5 minutes to create an impression of their seat, and then they would send it back to us. We would scan it, and the CAD system would cut the basic shape into an oak seat, with me finishing it by hand. It was a popular option, though it added $500 to the price. Most people opted for it. Molly had a friend, Zach, who also needed an internship, and soon he joined us. He had a talent for assembling the finished pieces and making the final adjustments with his help. Our production increased again. I focused more on carving while Jen handled the finishing work. By spring, we were 3 weeks ahead of schedule on orders just in time for our honeymoon. Jen wanted it to be a surprise, so I had no idea where we were going. By that time, we already felt like a married couple. We worked together, spent time together, and supported each other in everything. Jen still did some volunteer work and stayed in touch with her investors, though not as much as before. Jan and the other women in our circle remained close, and Jen occasionally went on spa weekends with them while Jen was away. I enjoyed hunting, though. I had grown more interested in photography than in the actual hunt. I would still get a deer or two each season, and once I even got a bear. Jen wasn't fond of venison, but she loved bear sausage and made me promise to take her hunting the next season. Everything seemed to be falling into place during early April. Jen was approached by some former business partners who wanted her to promote their new perfume. The pay was quite attractive, and the work schedule was light, as most of the commercials would be filmed at once, with only a few seasonal pitches later. At first, she kept quiet, and had her lawyers review the contract to ensure everything was legitimate. After thinking it over, she realized the offer was for a little over $1 million a year for a 3-year contract, with bonuses if the brand succeeded. Overall, that could total around $5 million for about 5 commercials a year. She then shared the details with me, providing all the paperwork. I took a few days to read through it. I knew she was interested and sensed that deep down she missed that lifestyle. Go for it if it makes you happy, I said, admitting that it made me a bit anxious. You'll be stepping back into the world of fame, luxury, and high-profile events. My worry is that you might start thinking life with me was just a brief escape from what you're used to. But I trust that our love is strong enough for that not to happen. She embraced me, resting her head against my shoulder. This is my life. It's what I choose. I want to explain why I'm considering this. Part of it is to help some mentors of mine. And there's also the fun aspect. It's not as serious as it used to be. I'd only need to shoot for about 2 weeks and then return to my normal life with just a few additional days during the holiday and summer seasons. 3 weeks of work for $5 million. And the best part is that all the money will go to charity, helping fire departments with hazmat vehicles. We could save lives together. She gave me a quick kiss and added with excitement, I'd love for your mom and Aunt Beth to be there with me, and I want you to spend some time with me too. It could help you understand me better and reassure you that this won't threaten what we have. It's just a matter of a few weeks. Over 3 years. I think we can manage. Then she took a deep breath. I want to get the first shoot done quickly. In 10 weeks we can move forward. I grinned. We haven't played house. I see us as committed as any married couple. We figured things out well together. It can only get better from here. I ended up regretting those words. Jen reconnected with her former agent for some help, with her trusty lawyers involved. Everything appeared set. In 2 weeks, she would be heading to New York. I planned to follow her for the first 3 days, but then I had to return home to run our business. I would come back for the weekend and she'd return the following week. Mom couldn't spend the entire time, but she would be there as much as could while Aunt Beth would be around for the whole term. It didn't take long for me to know that the modeling profession wasn't for me. Most of the individuals Jen worked with were kind, but some of the dominant characters were rather arrogant. I overheard a director reprimanding an actress on work for no justifiable reason. After a while, I could stand it no longer. "Excuse me?" I interrupted. "I think she's received the point by now. You don't have to chastise her anymore. Would you please be polite and allow us to all have a relaxing day here?" The set went quiet. The director took a time to answer. "Who believe you to be? Leave my set, please. You are prohibited from any stage at this time. I'm in. You would be even more enraged if you realized how little that bothered me. I believe I'll stay put. Would it be okay if I sat down and watched the show? I don't get to watch a master at work very often." A member of the sound crew burst out laughing and exited the stage. Clearly incensed, the director looked at anyone who dared look at him, then reached for a chair as if to toss it. I jumped in right away. "It might be wise for you to reevaluate your conduct. Is this the impression you want to give off? Take a look at everyone present. It wouldn't surprise me if you were unpopular with half of them. I'll be the one tossing the chair, so how about you put it down and get in it now? How did you get in here and who are you? That is unimportant. There is a reason I have security. You'll regret this exchange as well. Speak with security." Everyone looked at each other, and nobody moved for a while. At last, one of his aides emerged with haste. I smiled. It appears that we have some idle time. I'm excited to add some intrigue to this. If Jen hadn't entered the stage at that precise moment, I don't know how things would have turned out. She smiled at a few known acquaintances and then came to me, putting her arms around me, presenting the director with a visual treat. She spoke in a detached tone as though she was just now noticing him. "Hello, Bob. I understand you're in charge of this shoot. I updated my contract with a new clause, just so you know. Someone is out of my life if we can't collaborate on set. You too. I don't expect rudeness or outbursts. Do we understand each other?" She continued before he could compose himself to reply. "Oh, and to make sure we understand each other. My spouse is this person, and I adore him. Anyone who offends or shows disrespect toward him will face repercussions. Recognize it, or do I need to make it simpler? Alternatively, I might let him handle it. Bob, he's a seasoned professional who worked in a demanding field for years. I just figured you should be aware." Bob left the stage shouting for someone, but he didn't answer. Another kiss from her. "It appears that you got to know Bob. Despite being challenging to collaborate with, he is a gifted filmmaker. Although we don't get along well, as everyone knows, we are both professionals. We should be good as long as he does his share." I felt awful about the entire circumstance. The perfume had a very pleasant scent, a seductive whisper. "It's better that you like it," Jen muttered. "I will receive an additional $200,000 to wear it only for the term of the agreement. The model wouldn't look decent if she was seen in anything different." I watched her record the opening scene as she moved across a crowded room while sporting a stunning evening gown. Everybody, especially the guys, paused and gawked. When she got to the doorway, she turned to face the camera and winked. With a flirtatious gesture toward the most attractive man present, she smiled and remarked, "Never underestimate the power of a seductive whisper." Looking a little uncomfortable as she engaged in friendly conversation with him, he hurried over to her. Filmed with 5 cameras, it required 8 takes. Together with the producer and the product owner, we watched the edited version of the piece. They were happy with the outcome. Naturally, Bob thought otherwise, advising her to wear something more skimpy. The proprietor laughed in response. "Seductive whisper is not an inappropriate name for it. This is more stronger, hinting at something rather than stating it directly. Personally, I prefer it." The producer swiftly promised that he would get it ready for final approval by the following day, and that by the end of the week it might be available on streaming services, television, and movie trailers. Exasperated, Bob left. Jen merely grinned. I had business to attend to. Not because I didn't think our interns were trustworthy, but I was especially cautious of Molly. She was constantly searching for ways to get things done more quickly and with less effort. At last, I told her that she could make those decisions if she had her own company. If she behaved professionally, Jen and I had decided to let her stay for the summer and then separate ways. Regarding Molly, I was correct. She had pushed out more products than our model could handle, abusing our trust. It was annoying that after looking over the things, I discovered two that needed to be disassembled and reassembled, following the glue's setting. Probably would have to turn things down and decide to fix them up for charity instead. I questioned Molly about it, and she became quite angry. She maintained that it was time to update our strategy. I gave up and let her go. She was taken aback. It will be difficult for you to replace me. I'm an extremely skilled worker. That could be the reason I'm losing money on subpar work. It's really my fault, Molly. With greater focus, you could be an excellent artisan, but you'd rather take the easy route. Let's decide to separate and go on. She complained of unfair treatment to the labor board right away. I demanded that the local office examine everything and informed them that I would be providing audio and video documentation of our conversations. I further declared that if I was falsely accused or had my reputation damaged, I would take legal action. I then had a lawsuit for slander and any other pertinent accusations served to her by my counsel. She got in touch with him 2 days later and offered to take her complaint down if I dropped mine. We agreed to wait 2 weeks for her to make a public apology before we would agree. Though it was difficult for her, she succeeded. Because there had been attempts at breaking in, which put our finished products at risk, I had wired the business for security. Both my house and the local sheriff's office had alarms that went off if someone entered without the safety code. They missed one intruder, but apprehended two. If they went to a hospital, I imagined it would be easy to identify them. All the while, I was unable to go back to New York. When Beth contacted, Jen was scheduled to arrive in 2 days. You have to come upstairs. Something has occurred and Jen appears very distressed. She will not allow me to leave her sight, and your mother is on her way already. I flew up, stopping what I was doing. I headed directly to the studios from the airport. The security guard was hesitant to let me in, but Mom met me at the gate. Mom went right up to him. You'll let us through if you respect your work. Jen Foster, the advertisement star, is his wife. We are worried about her welfare. You may either make a scene or allow us through. As soon as we were almost out of sight, he moved aside. Mom turned around again to see him make a phone call. Put that away. You'll wish you had been arrested if we discover something improper and you warned someone. As we strolled, Mom informed me. She, the director, and one of the associate producers are in his office. Jen has been wobbly and pale for the past 2 days, and I can tell something is not right. They shoved Beth and me out of the room when we got to the meeting and locked the door. She has spent 45 minutes inside. I entered his office suite with determination. I ignored a receptionist's attempt to stop me. Then, as if it were his responsibility to keep me out, his chief assistant moved in front of me. When the cops showed up an hour later, he was still unconscious. Just in time, I kicked open the door to discover her standing in a corner with an office chair in her hand. She appeared distressed, and her blouse was ripped. Jack was grinning as he stood there. I promise to make sure your spouse sees the video if you don't change now. While one man attempted to seize the chair, he waved a phone at her. I blasted through the door, and Jack turned, but not quickly enough to dodge my blow to his jaw. I shot him in the stomach when he hit the ground. When I looked across at the other man, he was out of breath. Give it a minute, if you fail to do so. I hurt his knee. Then, as he collapsed, I stabbed my knee in his face. I gave him another kick just to be safe. Jen threw up and yelled. When the police came, I was holding her and gently stroking her face. They brought me to jail, so it was a good thing Jen was rich. I am accused of both assault and trespassing. 3 counts for breaking and entering for kicking down the door, 1 for each man I had to control, plus a couple of other charges I can't exactly recall. Jen swiftly posted the $1 million bond that was set for me throughout the trial. More information came to light. Days earlier, during a cocktail party, Jen had received a medication. She was about to be hurt, but she snapped out of it and defended herself. They said she'd had too much to drink and managed to get her into bed before they opened the door. When I arrived, Jen went to face Jack since she sensed something wasn't right. While gripping the chair, she had been yelling for assistance. How did we find out all of this? Before the cops showed up, I stole Jack's phone. He was filming Jen retaliating and saying hurtful things. There were disturbing videos of 2 other women who had been injured, as well as film showing them attempting to take advantage of her. I gave the district attorney my phone, telling him that if justice wasn't done, the videos would be circulated far and wide. I also had backups. Jack's career would be destroyed by public perception even if he avoided legal repercussions. Although there was some disagreement regarding the legality of how this evidence was gathered, it was ultimately decided that it was appropriate because I had recovered the phone. According to reports, Jack passed out as the cops began questioning him. The producer, who had already been questioned, promptly cooperated in order to protect himself. Offering Jen money, Jack attempted to get her to back down from her protest. "His lawyers would set you back more," she chuckled. The money was wisely spent. There was no trial in this case. Jack agreed to take a plea. He consented to spend 5 years in a low-security facility in exchange for entering a guilty plea to lesser charges. His career was ended when he was forced to register as a sex offender, even though he was eligible for parole in 13 months. He was being sued by the 2 ladies he had hurt earlier, so when he got out, he probably wouldn't have much money. Though I didn't plan for it to happen, I've heard that he went through some difficult moments while confined, experiencing multiple injuries and understanding what it's like to be helpless. It was a prison despite its luxuries. It was more difficult for the producer to serve 7 months in a conventional facility. I knew he had trouble fighting and had served extra time, but I wasn't sure how he fared. When the receptionist and assistant found out that the district attorney was thinking of filing charges against them for involvement, they recanted their statements. The executive producer and the owner of the perfume company were both deeply sorry and incensed about what Jen had gone through. They assured her that the next project would take place somewhere new, with a crew she could approve before production started. After giving it some thought, Jen chose to proceed with the contract. Her next assignment was scheduled for the summer in Miami and the winter in Aspen. I was able to escape going to jail in spite of the difficulties. It was accurate to say that the lawyers in court portrayed me as a husband attempting to shield his wife. I was given a 1-year probationary period and told to avoid New York during that period. For the first visit, they granted an exception, enabling it to take place in my home state afterwards. Jen was well enough to attend our wedding. She persisted on going forward even though I recommended we wait until she was more at ease. Not only no, but no way at all. "Honey, I really need this. I desire joyful recollections, not to bring up bad dreams." Thus, on a lovely June afternoon, an ordinary man married a well-known supermodel in a small chapel. Still, the ceremony was exquisite. To keep reporters at bay, we had to employ more cops. To their astonishment, a few rowdy ones were taken into custody and detained until the event was over. After realizing, the others behaved appropriately. As we left the church, more than 200 cameras flashed. Jen excitedly blew kisses to the reporters, her face beaming with joy. We'd scurried into the little helicopter we'd hidden away and taken off before the reporters could react. So before they could even get a picture, we made sure the police laughed. She was still rather well known, so at first we thought there might be a few reporters, but her recent circumstances and the ensuing legal action thrust her back into the spotlight. The situation got so bad that we had to fence in our house and hire guards for a period. It evolved into a contest. I would fetch our thrower and the clay targets, and the guards would let us know where they were. We enjoyed shooting the targets down after setting them to fly directly over their heads. Jen was quite good at it. She giggled every time the pieces broke, covered, and fell. A few others attempted to voice their complaints, but the sheriff just ignored them, stating that it was our right to shoot weapons on our land. We chose to take a warm-weather vacation on a private island. When I brought up the topic of beginning a family on the 3rd day, she rubbed her stomach and chuckled, telling me she was already 10 weeks along. I was lying next to her and marveling at how silky her back was. We would be celebrating our 30th anniversary on the same small island where we had spent our honeymoon in 3 weeks. We truly owned the island now. When the previous owner had to sell it because he hadn't handled his money correctly, Jen bought it without telling me. It was our favorite vacation because we had owned it for 11 years. Following in my footsteps, our daughter, J.J. Jen Jr., started a career in furniture design. She won accolades, so I was happy of her, even though I wish she had concentrated on more conventional materials. When she and her husband revealed they were expecting, she did ask me to build a rocking chair. Now 8 years old, her daughter enjoys spending time with Grandma Jen. I believe she likes me too, maybe because I make her small figures. Eric, our son, chose a different career route and became a lawyer. He got married young, but after realizing he wasn't as affluent as she had imagined, they were divorced 2 years later. For a while, he was a little apprehensive about getting into relationships until our old friend Jack came back into the picture. Jack was able to come see us frequently and go fishing with us every summer. After feeling overburdened at first, his new wife rapidly bonded with Allison, who was 11 at the time, and appreciated the maternal supervision. Bonnie. Jack's spouse took on a mother bear-like protective attitude toward Allison. I used to wonder all the time what would happen to the first boy who approached Allison about dating. She would probably have all the details about him before he even showed up at Allison's maternity shower. When we gave her the rocking rocker, she sobbed happily. We insisted it be a present, even though Jack wanted to buy it. Jack had no chance of avoiding the fact that they were expecting a girl. Let's fast forward 26 years. Jack arrived with his family for our yearly fishing excursion. Our children had grown by then, but they still enjoyed being in the water. In order to fit everyone, we leased a few pontoon boats, and the younger people coupled off, and the older people ended up together. Eric spent time with Jack's youngest daughter, Melanie, while JJ, her husband, and their 3 children joined up with Allison and her second husband, along with their children. Whenever we heard them arguing over the water, we would smile knowingly at each other. Tension was there since Melanie had recently concluded a long-term relationship, and Eric was still processing his feelings following his divorce. But by the time we made our way back to the landing, whatever they were talking about appeared to be settled. With the exception of Eric and Melanie, who decided to take a sunset cruise, everyone returned to the house to clean the fish and get ready for dinner. After 14 months of marriage, they made Melanie's pregnancy public. Later that night, Jack came up to me and asked for assistance in constructing a rocking rocker for their infant. I was more than pleased to help. They felt there was no need for a prenuptial agreement, and Jack voiced his confidence in their union. Although Jen had advised me to retire at 50, I still enjoyed occasionally creating rockers or furniture for old acquaintances. Every now and then, her first husband, Steve, would cross my mind. Despite having everything a person could ask for, he was never content. I thought that they might have broken up if Jen had known his secret. Yet occasionally I felt bad about my happiness, especially in light of his death. I felt bad for thinking bad things about him, but I also thought he ought to have put Jen's happiness first. In my opinion, he ought to have let her go if he was unable to give that. He seemed overly preoccupied with keeping up the facade of the ideal pair, unable to understand that Jen was just a beautiful person in need of love, respect, and consideration. It seems really easy, doesn't it? I had a childhood acquaintance that I lost contact with over time. He showed up at my wedding with a beautiful woman at his side, which startled me. I had invited him to my wedding. After that, he started to come just sometimes, always stopping in for a quick visit while traveling. To tell the truth, Lenny wasn't a particularly attractive man. But what made him stand out from everyone around him was his strong personality, which made his relationship easier for me to understand. Lenny had a large following despite his unremarkable appearance and casual attire. At age 29, he penned his debut novel, which he followed up with a bestseller at age 33. By the time he reached 50, he had 4 more hit novels under his belt. Film adaptations had been made of 7 of his writings. We had no idea he was so talented. Gazing at Jen's sleek back, I couldn't help but think of him. The reception was coming to an end, and we were seated together at a table. Lenny had been laughing all night, always with a strange sense of humor. Jen finally asked him what made him laugh so much. "Both of you. Not in a jesting manner, mind you. You resemble fictional figures, evidence of positive outcomes." He had to elaborate, of course. I wrote stories for the internet to hone my writing skills, something that most people are unaware of. I ended up loving it, and my editor recommended it, claiming it would help me develop a readership for my novels. Because I do my study thoroughly, I became knowledgeable about a variety of genres before I wrote my first article. A wealthy person falling in love with a regular person who has experienced hurt before is a recurring topic. Apart from the prior encounters, you two are a wonderful match. I could write everything I wanted to, but nobody would ever read it. Jen took a moment to think about that, even looking up some of his earlier work. This resulted in some excellent and thought-provoking discussions and encounters. Melody and the girls used to come over and giggle when they got into Jen's SUV for a fun afternoon excursion. I saw a bandage on her shoulder that evening. She reassured me that it was really a simple process. She didn't want me to worry because she had gone through something so straightforward. She held some cream when she emerged from the shower 3 days later. "Will you put this on my shoulder, honey?" According to the surgeon, this would hasten the healing process. Without hesitation, I agreed. When she looked away, it surprised me. What she had never acquired while modeling turned out to be a tattoo, which was the procedure. She talked about the length of time ladies with tattoos had to spend in the makeup chair during photo shoots in order to cover them up. She had therefore waited. The tattoo included a male and a female unicorn with their necks intertwined. The brilliant colors and fine details displayed the artist's exceptional skill. I assured her that it was lovely and that I would make sure to admire it when it healed. The tattoo was enlarged to incorporate a tiny unicorn next to the pair a year after our son JJ was born. Another was added on the other side after Eric, our second kid. In order to feature her tattoos in a magazine article about his work, the artist asked for permission. Jen had never modeled before. She smiled and glanced back, her back glowing and revealing her tattoos. This image was used as the issue's cover. The artist quickly gained a lot of popularity and turned down requests for similar works from numerous celebrities. He promised not to get another tattoo in exchange for being allowed to show off hers, and he kept his word. I marveled at the bigger unicorn and gave the smaller ones gentle kisses. With a smile, Jen drew me in.